Before we start, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on post notifications so you will not miss a future video.
Welcome to the channel, TheTechPianoPlayerKid.
A black background with white text that reads TheTechPianoPlayerKid displays on the screen with the same text written to the right in Braille. What's up everyone, TheTechPianoPlayerKid here, and welcome to part 2 of Timecrest 3 chapter 13. And we just left off where Scarlet and Ignis both got done fighting these sandworms, and also they needed help defeating the biggest sandworm, which was named the Eugantis or something like that. I have no idea how to pronounce this correctly. And they were not able to make it on their own, so Soul basically yelled, "Someone please help us." His ex-girlfriend, which we found out, her name was Rita, came and helped out and basically defeated this big sandworm. And it must have been huge if they couldn't defeat it on their own. So that happened, and we're also about to find out why Scarlet did not get promoted to a higher ranking per se, and we find out that Soul did get ranked up, I believe. Well, okay, if we didn't, then I just spoiled it, but oh well. Essentially, we just find out that Scarlet didn't get promoted because of whatever reason. We do find out what the reason could be in this video, but it's unfortunate what the reason is, but it is what it is. So, yeah. So now we continue into part 2 of Timecrest 3 chapter 13 and see what happens.
Close to the sun.
Description: Scarlet took a deep breath. It's okay, Rita. Whatever it is I need to improve on, I'll work hard to get better at it to make sure I get my promotion the next time. Description: Rita said. Description: Rita said, Scarlet, I think my mom denied your promotion because you're blind. Oh.
Okay, that's just a stupid reason to deny someone, like, for a promotion just because someone has that is just... Really?
Are you sure, Rita? Description: Rita said, she didn't say it, but she didn't have to. Description: Rita said, when I questioned her about your promotion, my mom told me it's because you didn't get good reviews. Description: Rita said, but you and I have been on enough quests together for me to know that you always try hard for your clients. So I snuck a look at your file and you received great reviews from your customers. Description: Rita said, I confronted my mom and she blew up on me for poking my nose in what she considers none of my business. Description: Rita said, but we all know she had a problem with you ever since she found out you are blind, so that has to be the reason. Description: Scarlet's shoulders sunk. Description: Rita sighed and said, I've never been more disappointed in my mom. I'm sorry, Scarlet. No, ellipsis, it's not your fault, Rita. Description: Rita said, I hope I didn't hurt you by telling you, Scarlet. You're like a sister to me. Description: Rita said, the last thing I want to do is hurt you. I just didn't want you to think that you didn't get promoted because of bad reviews. Description: Rita said, you've helped so many people as a mage and your reviews show it. Description: Scarlet smiled a little. Really? I'm still like a sister to you, Rita? Description: Rita looked over at Soul, who looked away. Rita looked back at Scarlet and said, yeah, I love you, Scarlet. I love you too, Rita. Description: Soul swallowed hard. He was looking at everything else he could look at, the sand, the sky, the burning wreckage of the Eugantis, anything else besides Rita. Is it okay if I talk to your mom about my promotion, Rita? I want to know what Guildmasters Claire has to say about this myself, but I won't talk to her if it'll make her angrier with you. Description: Rita said, go for it. I'm not done being angry at her. She's in her office right now in the administration chambers. I can't just walk into her office without an appointment. Description: Rita said, but I can. Description: Rita pulled out a teleport orb. She said, here, use this teleport orb. I'll take you into my mom's office, Scarlet. Description: Rita pressed the teleport orb into Scarlet's hand. What about Soul? Description: Rita said, Soul, do you want to come with us? You're heading back to the guild anyways, right? I can give you a teleport orb too. Description: Soul said, I don't need a teleport orb from you. I'll just walk to a guild teleport station. Brother, I don't want you walking alone in this desert. Description: Soul shouted, I'll be fine. Description: Rita sighed and said, will you wait here for Scarlet to return then? I'll give your sister another teleport orb so she can return here after she talks to my mom. Description: Rita said, the dead body of the Eugantis should ward off other sandworms for a while. Description: Rita looked at Soul, who is still focusing all his attention on the Eugantis carcass. Soul, why don't you come back with us? You can always pay Rita back for the teleport orb later. Description: Soul shouted, just go, Scar, I'm not some little kid that needs you to protect me. Description, Soul said, besides, don't you want to find out what Guildmaster's Unclair has to say about your promotion? I do, ellipsis, but, ellipsis. You'll at least wait here for me by the Gigantus where it's safe. You won't go walking around alone? Description, Soul said, I'll be right here, okay? Are you happy now? Description, Soul shouted, can you just go, Scarlet? Description, Scarlet paused. Okay, ellipsis, I'll be right back. Description, Rita said, come on, Scarlet. I'll see you around, Soul. Description, Soul didn't reply. System message, Scarlet and Rita. Description, Scarlet and Rita faced up to the receiver glyph. Description, the Icona Guild Administration Chambers is an airy area with shiny stone flooring and a roof held up by tall pillars. Description, a desert courtyard can be seen outside, but the chambers itself is very cool, surrounded by a see-through red veil. Description, the administration chambers is alive with loud chatter going on everywhere. System message, Scarlet is waiting. I'm sorry about your promotion, Scarlet. 1 of 5 responses. Button. I can't believe Rita seems nice. I can't believe Soul is getting a promotion. 2 of 5 responses. Button. Rita seems nice. What could she have done to make your brother break up with her? Is Soul your older brother or younger brother? 4 of say nothing. I'm sorry about your promotion, Scarlet. I'm sorry about your promotion, Scarlet. 1 of 5 responses. Description, Scarlet heard your message. In a low voice, she said. Thanks, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet paused. Did you really revive me today? Because, ellipsis, I did really feel like I was dying. System message, yeah, I did. 1 of 1 responses. Yeah, I did. 1 of 1 responses. Respond. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. Luthor, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet took a deep breath and shook her head. Description, Rita said, who are you talking to, Scarlet? Description, Scarlet gulped. Ellipsis, I was just lost in thought and talking to myself. Description, Rita tilted her head. She said, that's unlike you. You're usually so alert about your surroundings. Description, Rita sighed, but I can imagine you're probably more than a little unnerved after the Gigantus encounter and then finding out about your promotion, ellipsis. Ellipsis, Rita, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet took the pocket watch out of her cloak. Do you notice anything special about this watch? Description, Rita eyed the watch. She said, special? I think someone put a communication spell on it. Description, Rita said, may I take the watch from you to get a closer look? Description, Scarlet nodded and Rita took the watch from her. Rita held up the watch to her face. She said, hello, can anyone hear me? System message, Scarlet is waiting. Hi Rita, 1 of 3 responses. Why do you like Soul, Rita? Say nothing. Hi Rita, 1 of 3 responses. Did you hear that, Rita? Description, Rita paused. She said, hear what, Scarlet? Nothing. So, do you notice anything strange about this watch at all? Description, Rita said, it looks like a normal watch to me, but you think that a communication spell of some kind has been cast on it? Has anyone tried to communicate to you through it? Description, Rita placed the watch back into Scarlet's hand. I'm not sure. I thought I heard someone, but only I can hear the voice, so maybe I'm going crazy. Description, Rita said, ellipsis, if there is a spell attached to this watch, then an appraiser should be able to tell you which one. Right, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet felt the watch in her hand, running her thumb across the watch face before placing it back into her cloak pocket. Description, other mages phased onto the receiving glyph. Rita said, let's not block the receiving glyph. I'm taking your hand. Yeah, ellipsis. Description, Rita took hold of Scarlet's hand and the two walked off the receiver glyph. Description, Rita led Scarlet through the administration chambers. Description, there were several water stations inside the administration chambers and a refreshment table topped with fruits. Description, Scarlet and Rita passed by a group of mages wearing beige cloaks without any embellishments standing in front of one water station. The mages in the group are busy gulping down water. Description, one of the mages with the beige cloak said, so, ellipsis, is all this water really for free as long as we don't get kicked out of the guild? Description, Rita smiled as a mage dressed in a red cloak with gold embroidery like hers said, yes, it's all the water you can drink here. Description, the mage with the beige cloak eyes lit up with delight. He said, and the fruit, ellipsis, is the fruit for free too? Description, the red cloak mage said, yes, welcome to Icona Guild, the best guild for fire mages in all of Valencia. Description, Rita smiled and said, I can't wait until it's my turn to show new mages around the guild. I love telling someone who has lived in Bastard all their lives that they can have all the water. Description, Rita smiled and said, I can't wait until it's my turn to show new mages around the guild. I love telling someone who has lived in Bastard all their lives that they can have all the water they want. Description, Rita said, it makes me happy seeing someone so happy. Description, lots of mages waved at Rita as she led Scarlet through the administration chambers. I can't believe the kingdoms here go as far as restricting the purchase of teleport orbs so people can't travel to other places for water. Description, Rita said, the laws here drive me mad sometimes, especially because I've had the privilege of traveling to other places and seeing how people live elsewhere. I can't believe there are no griffin transports here. I want to ride on a griffin every day. The rules around water are crazy, but all the best fire mages gather in Baskran. Well, water is expensive. All other foods except for fruits are subsidized and really cheap if you're a full-time citizen of this region. Description: Scarlet's voice is filled with good cheer and positivity. And the cost to rent a place is also much lower than other areas too, for full-time citizens. Description: Rita said, I know. I'm just complaining. I know I told you so many times that I wanted to be a world traveler and live in a different town every week, but I still haven't made any concrete plans yet because deep down I like living here. Description: Rita grinned and said, the food is so cheap and delicious, and so flavorful compared to other territories. And if I renounce my citizenship, I won't be able to get it back. Soul is taking me to Sandbar tonight for dinner. Description: Rita said, MMMHMMM, Sandbar is great. We had some wild nights there. Hope you two have a good time, ellipsis. Description: Scarlet squeezed Rita's hand. I miss you so much, Rita, ellipsis. I would even discuss Baskar laws with you all day. Description: Rita laughed. Description: After a moment, she lowered her gaze. Rita said, I miss you too, Scarlet. I'm sorry that I've been avoiding you lately. It's just not easy seeing you when your brother is always around. I'm sorry I don't come see you either. I know I'll hurt Soul if I go see you behind his back. Description: Rita said, I know. I don't expect you to choose me over your brother, Scarlet. I was really jealous of how close you two were in the beginning, but then I got to know you and really loved you from there. He still has that photo of you too. Description: Rita's eyes widened. She said, you mean the one in the shape of a heart? Yeah, that one. Description: Rita laughed and said, he always said he hated that photo. His hair was a mess and his eyes weren't open. He looked so cute. Description: Rita bit down on her lip. She said, why did he break up with me all of a sudden, Scarlet? I don't know. He wouldn't tell me. Description: Rita said, I thought things were going so well between us. He cried after breaking up with you. So, I don't know. Maybe he's scared that he loves you? Description: Rita rubbed one hand over her eyes. She said, what an idiot, ellipsis. Description: Rita clutched her chest and said, but I still love him. Ellipsis, what should I do, Scarlet? You should talk to him, ellipsis. Description: Rita stopped walking. She and Scarlet stood in the middle of the administration chambers. Rita reached into her cloak pocket and took out 2 pieces of paper. Description: Rita looked down at the pieces of paper. She said, I got the concert tickets to the Praise the Twin Tail, Starfall Tour Soul and I ordered a while back. He paid for the tickets so I was going to slip it underneath the door of your room, but... Description: Rita blushed and said, do you think Soul would maybe want to go with me still? Description: Scarlet smiled. You should talk to him, Rita. Please give him another chance. Please? For me? Description: Rita sighed. Twitter, now, you toss. Description: Rita sighed. She said, description,
There we go.
Rita
Sorry, guys.
sighed. She said, so he still has the heart-shaped photo of us? I'm sure. He tried to hide it from me, but I found it when I was cleaning a room one day. Description: Rita smiled and put the tickets back in her cloak. She said, okay, ellipsis, I'll go back with you to the desert after you talk to my mom. I'll ask Soul if he wants to go to the concert with me. Description: Scarlet's face brightened. Yay, but if he acts cold to you, please forgive him, Rita. He does love you. I know he does. He talks so much about moving to Windsor Howell permanently and applying for citizenship. Description: Rita said, really? He hates how hot it gets here though and he loves water. He already works for Icona Guild so he gets free water and, ellipsis, he wanted to move in with you. Description: Rita took a deep breath and said, there is something I really want to talk to him about. Description: A mage wearing the same colored cloak as Scarlet approached. He smiled warmly at Rita and said, hi, Rita. Description: Rita said, oh, ellipsis, hey, Isaac, ellipsis. Description: Scarlet gulped. Hey, Isaac. How have you been? Description: Isaac gave Scarlet a cold stare. In a disgusted voice, he said, where's your brother? It's ironic. I finally see you without your brother only after we've broken up. Description: Scarlet cringed. Description: Rita said, okay, Isaac. Nice catching up, but Scarlet and I need to go find my mom before she leaves her office. Description: Isaac said, sure thing, Rita. Give Guildmaster Sinclair my best. Description: Rita gave Isaac a small smile and nod before pulling Scarlet away. Description: Rita said, are you okay, Scarlet? I would have avoided Isaac if I saw him before he got to us. I'm fine. Really, Rita. I'm over Isaac. We didn't really date that long. Description: Rita sighed and said, sorry I introduced you to a big dragon turd like him. I can't believe he got jealous of Soul. I mean, come on, Soul is your brother. How dare he tell you to put him before your brother? Description: Rita said, by the way, I'm not friends with Isaac anymore. Though he still tries to talk to me because my mom is a guild master here. Description: Scarlet looks pleasantly surprised. Really? You don't have to ditch Isaac as a friend because of me, ellipsis.
Well,
Description: Rita said, I don't want to be friends with a big dragon turd who's clearly wrapped up in his own ego. Description: Scarlet laughed. Thanks, Rita. This means a lot.
this is a lot.
Description: Rita smiled and said, come on. We should go find my mom before she leaves her office. Description: Scarlet nodded as Rita led her the rest of the way through the administration chambers and past the front counter. The administrators behind the counter eyed Rita, but didn't stop her when she headed towards the offices behind them. Description: Rita opened the door without knocking and pulled Scarlet inside. Description: Guildmaster Sinclair frowned as she saw her daughter enter the room with Scarlet. Description: Rita said, we are inside my mom's office, Scarlet. She's sitting behind her desk. Go ahead and ask her anything you want. Description, Guildmasters Unclair had her hair pulled back in a bun. She pushed her reading glasses up and leaned back in her chair without saying a word. Description, Scarlet clasped her hands together and bowed. I'm sorry to take up your time, Guildmasters Unclair, but I heard from Rita that you denied my promotion to gold rank. I just want to hear from you why you did that. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, it is your reviews, Scarlet. Description, Rita said, stop lying, Mom. I saw Scarlet's file and... Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, it's Scarlet's peer reviews. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, when we promote someone we take into account what their peers think of them. Other Iconogolds simply don't trust having a blind mage with them in battle. Description, Rita said, what about me? I love working with Scarlet. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, you and her brother, Soul, are in the minority. Guildmasters Unclair, I am one of the few mages in Icona Guild with a Summitus level spell. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, well your spells are quite strong, you're only effective if your enemy is on the ground within your sensory radius. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, you're silver rank because you're great at farming brainless sandworms. I'll admit, you do that quite well, Scarlet. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, but you're powerless against creatures who can fly, mages who stay outside of your radius, projectile magic or anything that isn't touching the ground. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, and the list goes on. Iconogolds are sent on the toughest quests and battles are about quick reactions. Without your sight, you won't be able to keep up with the action in most scenarios. Description, Rita said, I can be easily countered too. Someone just has to cut off my aura potion supply and I won't be able to attack again. Description, Rita said, this is all about your fears isn't it, Mom? You're afraid that if Scarlet and I are the same rank we'd go on gold level quests together. I trust Scarlet more than any other mage in this guild. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, has she ever saved you in a fight, Rita? Description, Rita took a deep breath. She said, Scarlet has held her own on all of our quests. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, has she ever saved you? No, I haven't. Rita has always saved me. Description, Guildmasters Unclair nodded and said, I thought so. If only you could see, then maybe your guildmates won't have to put themselves in danger to save you all the time.
Jeez.
Description, Scarlet swallowed hard and Rita clenched both her fists. Rita said, Scarlet would protect me with her life, Mom. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, I trust that Scarlet's a good friend and person, but like her peers, I don't trust her abilities to protect anyone so I think we're done here. Guildmasters Unclair, ellipsis. I don't need the title of a gold. I don't need any of the other benefits. I just want to be able to do the same quests as my brother. I want to remain by his side. So please, if you can just please allow me to go on all the quests my brother will have access to as a gold, then you don't need to promote me. Description, Guildmasters Unclair paused and said, I can vote against his promotion too. Description, Scarlet shook her head. No, please don't take away my brother's promotion. Description, Rita shook her head and said, Mom, ellipsis, how can you even suggest something like that? Scarlet loves her brother more than anything. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, then she'll be glad that a capable Icona Gold will be watching her brother's back on the hard quests. Description, Guildmasters Unclair lowered her gaze to the paperwork on her desk. She said, now, I've addressed your concerns. Please leave me to my work or I will vote against Soul's promotion. Description, Rita said, Mom. Rita, ellipsis, it's okay. Let's go. Thank you for your time, Guildmasters Unclair. Description, Guildmasters Unclair said, dinner is pot roast and soup tonight. Rita, I expect you to be on time. Close the door behind you when you leave. Description, Rita took hold of Scarlet's hand and slammed the door of her mother's office on the way out. Description, outside, Rita leaned against the door. She said, I'm so sorry, Scarlet, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. It's okay, ellipsis, you're still going to ask my brother about the Praise the Twin Tails concert, right? Description, Rita, please. If, description, Rita took
Whoa.
My cue. Description, Rita took a deep breath and said, yeah, ellipsis, okay, I'll try. I'll feel it. Descript, please. If you two can make up. Description, Rita paused. She said, I don't know. It really hurt when he broke up with me and I really don't want to cry. Description,
Okay, there we go.
Rita paused. She said, I don't know. It really hurt when he broke up with me and I really don't want to cry tonight. Please, if you two can make up, ellipsis, then I'll feel a lot better if you can go on gold level quests with him. Description, Rita took a deep breath and said, yeah, ellipsis, okay, I'll try. I'll feel a lot better if we make up too. Let's head back to my brother then. Description, Rita nodded and took out 2 teleport orbs. System message, Scarlet and Rita are teleporting. Description, Scarlet and Rita phased back to the desert. Description, Soul is by the carcass of the Gigantus. The flames that had been burning it has died down. Description, Soul is holding something red. Description, Soul is holding something red and shiny in his hand. Description, Soul is holding something red and shiny in his hand. Description, Rita's eyes widened. She said, no, Soul, drop that now. What's going on? Description, Scarlet's shoes turned red. Description, Soul looked at Rita and Scarlet. He said, oh, you two are back. Look at what I found in the Gigantus wreckage while you were away. Scar, a ruby dragon egg. Description, Soul said, this is our lucky day after all. Description, Rita ran towards Soul. She said, drop the egg, Soul. Description, Soul said, sorry, Rita, but this ruby dragon egg is mine. Description, through the clouds, a loud roar can be heard. Description, Scarlet tilted her head upwards, a troubled expression on her face. What's up there? Description, she swallowed hard and clenched both hands into fists. What's up there? Description, a pillar of flame shot out through the clouds, aimed at Soul. Description, Rita reached Soul and pulled him back from the flames. The flames that shot out of the sky set the carcass of the gigantus in the surrounding desert ablaze. Soul. Description, Scarlet ran towards her brother. Description, Rita took the ruby dragon egg from Soul and threw it back into the flames. Description, Soul shouted, "Are you crazy, Rita? That's a ruby dragon egg." Description, Rita shouted, "You promised me." Description, Rita took a deep breath and said, "You promised me that you'd stop searching for eggs." Description, Soul said, "That's when we were still dating. We're not dating anymore. Besides, you expect me to just ignore a ruby dragon egg when it's right in front of me?" Description, Rita said,
Oh,
"Leave the
boy.
egg, Soul, or the ruby dragon will kill you. The dragon will leave you alone as long as we don't touch its eggs." Description, Scarlet reached her brother's side. Description, Soul spread out his arms and said, "When did you become such an expert on ruby dragons, Rita?" Description, Soul said, "You've only seen one ruby dragon. It's not like you've ever found an egg before." Description, Rita lowered her gaze. Description, Soul said, "Rita, you never found an egg before, have you? Because we promised to not go searching for eggs because of how dangerous ruby dragons can be." Description, Soul said, "And if you did find an egg, you would have
Oh
told me
boy,
about it,
this is
right?
good.
Right, Rita?"
This is gonna
Description,
escalate.
Scarlet
This is gonna
stood by
get
her brother
bad
quietly.
quickly.
Description, Rita said, I did find an egg before and I learned the hard way to leave a ruby dragon's egg alone. It's true that dragons can track their eggs and they always come looking for their babies." Description, Soul paused. He shouted, "Wait a minute. Why do you sound so sure of this?" Description, Rita grimaced. Description, Soul crossed his arms and said, "Don't tell me, you found an egg while we were dating?" Description, Rita nodded. Description, Soul shouted, "Unbelievable." Description, Soul pointed one finger at Rita and said, "You're really something, aren't you, Rita? You made me promise to stop looking for eggs when all you really wanted was an egg for yourself." Description, Rita shook her head. She said, "That's not it. That's not it at all." Description, Soul stared at the raging flames surrounding the gigantus carcass. He said, "Well, today's egg is mine. Incendiatos Melior Magnus, resist heat." Description, Rita said, "No, Soul, wait." Description, before Rita could stop him, Soul charged at the flame wall. He reached his hand toward the flame wall. Description, the tip of his finger made contact with the flame first. Soul immediately pulled back his hand, clutching it in pain. Description, with wide eyes, he said, "It's still so hot even with my resist heat active." Description, Rita looks worried. She reached out her hand to Soul, but lowered it when he pulled away from her. Description, Rita said, ellipsis, Soul, why did you do that?" Description, still clutching his hand, Soul said, "Whatever. I'll just get a healer to look at this burn when I get back to the guild." Description, Rita shook her head. She said, "Dragons are so rare that most mages like us forget that ruby dragons have the hottest flame in Olency and that even best healers have trouble healing burns inflicted by a ruby dragon." Description, Soul said, "I'll just wait for these flames to die down then." Description, Rita said, "The ruby dragon is here. It won't leave until it has retrieved its egg." Description,
Oh, boy.
Soul shouted, "I said, I'm going to wait." Description, Rita pushed her cloak back and unveiled her scarred arm. Soul's eyes widened. Description, Rita said, "So, I got burned too when I found a dragon egg. I waited too for the flames to die down." Description, Rita said, "Please forget about ruby dragon eggs, Soul. They are not worth it." "Brother, Rita, are you both okay?" Description, Soul stared at Rita's arm. A mix of emotions crossed his face. Description, Soul said, "You broke your promise to me, Rita. You went searching for eggs by yourself." Description, Soul eyed Rita and said, "You deserve to be burned." Description, Rita's arm dropped to her side. She shook her head at Soul as YouTube, now, Keely.
Whoa.
Description, Rita's arm dropped to her side. Description, Rita's arm dropped to her side.
There we
She
go.
shook her head at Soul as tears welled up in her eyes. An immediate expression of regret crossed Soul's face. "Brother, why are you saying that to Rita?" Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. "How could you say something like that to Rita? This is Rita. This is our first friend in Icona Guild. This is the person who tells you every day that you're going to become the greatest master of fire Valencia has ever seen. This is Rita, your first love." Description, Soul shouted, "Shut up, Scar. I know who Rita is." Description, Rita continued to shake her head. She said, "I didn't want an egg for myself. I wanted one as a gift to you for our anniversary." Description, Soul looked away from Rita. He clenched his jaw and said, "Why you still shouldn't have broken your promise to me." Description, Rita said, "Soul Ignis, you're a big idiot. Why did I have to fall in love with you?" Description, Rita took out the tickets to the Praise the Twin Tail concert and threw them in Soul's face. Description, Soul blinked as the concert tickets fluttered to the sand. Rita turned around and ran away. Description, Soul reached out his hand for Rita. He said, "Rita." Description, Soul shouted, "Rita, you come back and take these tickets. I bought them for you." Description, Rita faded into the distance. "Go after her, Soul." Description, Soul swallowed hard. He covered his eyes with his hand for a moment before he said, "Give me the watch." "What?" Description, Soul said, "You still have the pocket watch, right?" "Yeah, but why are you thinking about the watch? You should be worried about Rita. She sounded so upset, ellipsis." Description, Soul said, "Why did she even come back with you? It's not like she's my girlfriend anymore. She was going to ask you to..." Description, button. She was going
Whoops.
to ask you to the She was going to ask you to the Praise the Twin Tail concert." Twitter.
Ah,
She
too many
was
Twitter
going to ask you to the praise
notifications.
the Twin Tail concert. She said she had something to tell you. Description, Soul eyed the concert tickets, a look of dismay on his face. Description, Soul said, what did she have to tell me? I don't know. I didn't ask. Description, Soul kicked the sand and said, oh, you should have asked, Scar. Description, Soul and Scarlet are silent for a moment. Soul took a deep breath and said, give me the watch. What are you going to do with it? Description, Soul said, I'm going to toss it in the ruby dragon fire. Description, Soul said, we've been having such bad luck ever since Luthor sent us that watch. First you almost died. Then the Gigantus showed up. Description, Soul swallowed hard. He said, then this whole thing with Rita, ellipsis, it's all Luthor's curse. The watch Luthor isn't to blame, ellipsis, especially with what happened with Rita. And, I think the watch saved me. Description, Soul said, what are you talking about? That watch is nothing but trouble I tell you. Description, Soul said, please. Description, Soul sniffled and said, please, ellipsis, just give me the watch, okay? Description, Scarlet sighed and handed Soul the watch. He clasped his hands around it, closing the lid. System message, connection lost. 23 hours, skip timer for 1 skip crystal. Skip timer
Alright.
for 1 skip crystal. Back. The current chapter 13.
Still in chapter 13.
Description, Soul swallowed.
Jeez.
Description, Scarlet sighed and handed Soul the watch. Description, 1 month passed.
Whoa.
Description, the pocket watch clicked open. Description, Scarlet is sitting on a small circular stool in front of a table in the middle of a large room filled with armor. Her red hair is tied up in a neat ponytail and she is wearing her gray overalls and shirt. Description, the table is topped with cleaning supplies and empty paper tags, all sorted in a very organized and thoughtful manner. Description, a row of polished, clean armor sets lined one side of the room. A row of description, a row of polished, clean armor sets lined one side of the room. A row of stained armor sets lined the opposite side. Description, the windows and door of the armor room are all open, circulating a fresh breeze throughout the room. The walls of a Valdoran quarantine zone can be seen outside the windows. Description, Scarlet set the pocket watch on the table in front of her. Also, in front of her on the table, is a small lunchbox with one plain Baturban. Description, Scarlet picked up a Baturban and started eating. Description, she chewed slowly. Description, she chewed slowly and swallowed. She smiled in satisfaction. In a cheerful tone she said, warm Baturbans are the best. I'll never get tired of eating them. Speaking rate, words,
What are those?
warm, Baturban, B-U-T-T-E-R-B-U-N-S, space.
Oh, butter buns. Okay. I was like, what is a butter bun? Okay, butter buns. Okay. That makes more sense.
Description, Scarlet held the Baturban up to her nose and took a deep breath. They smell so good too. Description, Scarlet paused, before sighing a little. But, I have to admit, eating without Soul is a lot less fun, ellipsis. Description, she reached out and touched the pocket watch with one hand. After a moment, Scarlet shook her head. No, stop being so needy, Scarlet. Be proud that your brother is a gold rank mage now. Be grateful that your brother is earning a lot more now that he gets to go on higher level quests. Besides, talking to yourself hasn't been the worst pastime. True, it seems to be your only hobby now, ellipsis. But, ellipsis, it's not the worst. Description, Scarlet paused again. Hey, voice, are you there? Description, silence surrounded her in the tranquil armor room. Voice, ellipsis. I've had the watch for a few weeks now, but I haven't heard you in my head. Maybe it's because I didn't have the watch open, ellipsis. Or maybe it's because you're gone. But, if you're still there, ellipsis, it would actually be kind of nice to hear you again. System message. Hey, Scarlet, anytime you want to talk to me just open the watch. I hope to get to know you better. 1 of 5 response. The turbans sound pretty delicious. 2 of 5 so you finally want to talk to me. What about your, wow, a month passed already. So, the turbans sound pretty delicious. 2 of 5 responses. The turbans sound pretty delicious. Responded, Twitter, description, Scarlet heard your message. She smiled a little. Since you're a voice in my head, then I guess if I'm eating a Baturban, you're eating one too? You must know I really like them then. Soul and I like to save gold, so I eat mostly the plain ones. I enjoy the plain ones, but my favorite is the fried Baturban with premium sweet filling.
Oh, that sounds so good.
Description, Scarlet licked her bottom lip. I love the chewy layer in between the filling and the fried outside. Description, Scarlet smiled. It smells and tastes so good, especially if it's made fresh. It's triple the price of a plain Baturban, but Soul and I have a treat ourselves budget too, which I promptly spend on fried Baturbans. Description, Scarlet took another bite of her Baturban. Description, she chewed and swallowed. Okay, I never expected talking to a voice in my head would feel so natural. It really does feel like I'm talking to a person. Description, Scarlet shrugged to herself. But I know that's impossible because if there was some sort of communication spell on this watch, then other people would be able to hear this voice too. Description, Scarlet sighed. I'm beginning to think you are losing your mind, Scar. Description, Scarlet took another bite of her Baturban. Description, she chewed and swallowed. Why would you try to talk to a voice in your head? Description, Scarlet paused and propped her chin up with her free hand. I guess you never made a friend on your own before. Your only other friend besides Soul is Rita. And Soul was the one who made friends with Rita. Description, Scarlet paused. Description, Scarlet took another bite of her turban. Description, she chewed and swallowed. I hope Soul is okay, ellipsis. Please be safe, brother, ellipsis. The only thing I want in this life is for you to be safe, Soul. Okay, that's not true. I also want you to be happy and healthy too, brother. And for you and Rita to get back together. I wish the universe would give me a hint on how to ensure those things happen. System message, Scarlet. This won't make sense to you now, but you become my enemy in the future and I don't want it to happen. 1 of 3 response. I think it's sweet how much you care for your brother, Scarlet. 2. Let's be friends, Scarlet. 3 of 3 responses. This won't make sense to you now.
Ooh, my
but you
stomach
become
growled.
My enemy in the future and I don't want it to happen. 1 of 3 response. This won't make sense to you now, but you become my enemy in the future and I don't want it to happen. 1 of 3 responses. Button. This won't make sense to you now, but you become my enemy. Description. She looks confused. I become enemies with the voice in my head? Oh, I hope that doesn't happen too. I'm sure that will lead to headaches. Description, Scarlet chuckled to herself. Okay, that was a pretty lame joke, Scar. I'm sure that will lead to oh, I hope that doesn't happen too. I'm sure that will lead to headaches. Description, Scarlet chuckled to herself. Okay, that was a Twitter. Okay, that was a pretty lame joke, Scar. Description, a buzzing sound can be heard near Scarlet. Description, the bug landed on her neck and took a quick bite. Scarlet dropped the remainder of her turban and jumped up from her seat. Now, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet slapped her neck, but not quick enough and the bug flew away and continued to buzz around. Description, a red spot appeared on Scarlet's neck where the bug bite is. Description, the bug circled in the air for a bit before landing on the table. The buzzing stopped. Description, Scarlet smiled and her hands and shoes started glowing red. Okay, bug, I think you landed. Now, ellipsis, where are you? Description, the table began to glow as Scarlet pressed her hands on it, but before her spell could find the bug, the insect took flight and the buzzing began again.
Well,
Description, the bug landed on Scarlet's arm. She slapped her arm, but it was too late and the bug had already taken another bite. Description, Scarlet sighed as she sat back down and her hands and shoes stopped glowing. Description, Scarlet felt around the table for her dropped turban. She sighed again as she gathered the broken bits of her lunch and put it back into the lunchbox. Description, she pushed the lunchbox to the opposite side of the table from the cleaning supplies. Scarlet carried several different towels in the pocket of her overalls. She took out a towel from her side pocket and wiped the table off with it. Description, the bug landed on Scarlet's neck again. Did Guildmaster's Unclair send you, bug? Description, Scarlet didn't move to slap the bug off her neck. In any case, you won, bug. You can have me for lunch. I can protect my guildmates from most mages because they use projectile magic. And I can't help my brother get a ruby dragon egg from a dragon if I can't, ellipsis, even protect myself from a little bug. Description, the bug took off from Scarlet's neck, this time without biting her. Ellipsis, why didn't you bite me this time, bug? Maybe, ellipsis, you're taking pity on me. Description, only a buzzing sound can be heard. System message, Scarlet is, maybe the bug didn't bite you because it's full. 1 of 4 response, you must be really lonely to be talking to a bug now too. What are your hobbies, Scarlet? I think it's cute when you talk to yourself. 4 of 4 responses. System message, maybe the bug didn't bite you because it's full. 1 of 4, maybe the bug didn't bite you because it's full. Yeah, maybe that's it instead. Description, Scarlet smiled. Whatever the case, it's 1 less bite. Description, Scarlet cleared her throat. Okay, ellipsis, enough talking to the voice in your head, Scarlet. Time to get back to work. Description, Soul said, hey Scarlet, are you talking to the pocket watch? Description, a look of surprise crossed Scarlet's face when she heard her brother's voice, before she smiled a big smile. I didn't expect you would be back so early from your quest today, brother. I was just thinking about what I should make us for dinner. Description, Scarlet stood up from her seat and turned towards the doorway. Her shoes are glowing red as her sensory radius extends to Soul. Description, Scarlet looks confused. Description, Petora is standing in the doorway instead of her brother. She had a serious face and hair that is light blue on one side and light green on the other. Description, in Soul's voice, Petora said, yeah, I'm back early. It was an easy quest. You're not Soul. Why are you copying the voice of my brother? Description, still mimicking Soul's voice, Petora said, are you alright, Scarlet? You're not making any sense. Of course, I'm your brother. Stop lying to me and tell me who you are. Description, Petora paused. After a moment, she said in her own voice, I thought you were blind so I didn't bother to take on your brother's appearance. But you can see me, can't you? I am blind. Tell me who you are and why you are copying my brother's voice. Description, Scarlet looks angry and worried and desperate all at once. She bawled. Description, Scarlet looks angry and worried and desperate all at once.
well.
She balled her hands into fists. Where is Soul? Did you do something to him? If you did something to him, ellipsis. Description, Petora said, I didn't do anything to your brother. Description, Petora said, I'm just here for the watch and I thought pretending to talk like your brother would give me easy access. Description, Petora's voice sounded lifeless and matter-of-fact. Description, Scarlet looks shocked. The watch, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet looks nervous. I think you have the wrong person. I don't know this watch you're talking about. Description, Petora looked past Scarlet and saw the pocket watch on the table. She said, I see you have a pocket watch out on the table. Description, Petora said, I just came here to see if the watch you have is indeed the cursed watch. If so, you could be in danger, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. What do you know about the watch? Description, Petora said, the watch is indestructible and keeps teleporting back to you, right? Description, Scarlet didn't reply. Description, Petora eyed Scarlet. She said, I overheard you speaking to a voice in your head. You shouldn't have spoken to it. Description, Scarlet looks nervous. Description, Scarlet reached over to the table and felt around for the watch. She found it. System message. Description,
Whoops.
Scarlet reached over to the table and felt around for the watch. She found it and closed the lid. 23 minutes 4 seconds. Skip timer for 1 skip crystal. You have 0 skip.
Okay, so unfortunately I'm going to have to wait because I don't have any more skip crystals. So I'll be back. Okay.
Skip timer for 1 skip crystal.
I got some more
Skip timer for 1 skip.
crystals. What do we call them?
Description, Petora is alone in the system message. Connection lost. Description, the pocket watch. Volume. Sounds. Volume. 55. 6 word. Description, the pocket watch. Description, the pocket watch clicked open. Description, Petora is alone in the armor room. She's holding onto the pocket watch with a serious expression on her face. Description, some time passed. Description, the bug from earlier buzzed around the room. Description, description,
Whoa.
some more time passed. Description, the bug from earlier buzzed around the room. Petora followed it with her eyes, a little smile on her face as the insect flew around with seemingly tons of spirit. Description, some more time passed. Description, Scarlet walked back to the armor room looking perplexed, her shoes are glowing red. Description, Petora said, how's Soul? Description, Scarlet said, he's okay like you said. Just a bit angry now that I went to check up on him, ellipsis. Description, Petora said, I told you I didn't hurt him. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. I'm sorry I threatened you. I tend to overreact when it comes to my brother. Description, Scarlet sighed. She walked back to her stool by the table and sat down. Petora, ellipsis, did I get your name right? Description, Petora said, yes, that's my name. What are you doing now, Petora? Description, Petora said, after you left, I started to determine if this watch you have is the watch. You mean the cursed watch? Description, Petora said, that's right. What else do you know about the watch, Petora? Description, Petora said, I know what master allows me to know. You have a master. Description, in a monotone voice, Petora said, I do. Can you tell me who your master is? Description, Petora lowered her gaze. She said, I only know what master allows me to know. What does that mean?
Oh.
Description, Petora said, it means I don't know who my master is because I'm not allowed to know.
Oh.
Description, Scarlet had a puzzled expression on her face. She shook her head. Did your master tell you anything else about the watch, Petora? Description, Petora said, before I tell you, I must first determine if this watch is the cursed watch. Description, Scarlet furrowed her brows. Okay, ellipsis. What exactly are you doing to determine if this watch is cursed? Description, Petora said, I am imbued with master's powers. I just need to hold the watch long enough before I know. Unfortunately, the watch has to be open as I hold it. Description, Scarlet gripped the edge of her seat. Is it bad if it's open? Description, Petora said, if this watch is the cursed watch, then yes, it's bad that it's open.
Why though?
Description, Scarlet looks concerned. You said earlier that I shouldn't have spoken to the voice in my head. Why did you say that? Description, Petora said, if this watch is the one, then you shouldn't. The more you interact, the more trouble you'll get into. Description, Scarlet looks perplexed. What kind of description, Scarlet looks perplexed. Her fingers grip the edge of her seat. What kind of trouble? Do you know who or what kind of trouble?
Need some more
Do you know
candy.
who or what the voice is? Because as you know, I've already spoken to the voice in my head. Description, Petora sighed. She said, it's useless to tell you until I figure out if this watch is the correct watch. I wouldn't say it's useless. It'd help me a lot since I'm really confused here. Description, Petora said, I'll tell you when I'm done with the watch. But this watch does teleport back to me. And it's also indestructible. Doesn't that mean it's the cursed watch? Description, in her monotone voice, Petora said, the signs are not good, but we won't know for sure until my test is done. And I'm also hearing a voice in my head. I'm guessing that's not a good sign either. Description, Petora said, could be something else that's causing the voice. Description, Petora said, I don't want to get your hopes up, but maybe someone is trying to prank you or take over your mind with a spell. Description, Scarlet looks shocked. What? But mind control is forbidden magic. Are you saying that getting my mind taken over is a better alternative to this watch being the cursed watch? Description, Petora said, yes. Description, Scarlet gulped. Description, Petora held the watch in her hand as she stood near the door of the armor room. Description, she said, I don't know how long this will take. Feel free to carry on with your day in the meantime. Description, Scarlet sighed. That's going to be hard to do, Petora. You come out of nowhere telling me the voice in my head is trouble, but you won't tell me what kind of trouble. And if this watch ends up being a cursed watch, it's not like I can just get rid of it. It'll just teleport back to me. Description, Scarlet paused, looking hopeful for a moment. Petora, do you know how to get rid of the watch? Description, Petora said, not even the masters of Valencia could get rid of this watch. Description, hope left Scarlet's expression. Petora, I'm really confused. Why did I end up with a watch? Am I in some big trouble here? Description, Petora said, I'll tell you later, when I'm done with the watch. Once I've determined if this is the one. Description, Scarlet's shoulders slumped. And how long will that be? Description, Petora said, I'll know when I know. Feel free to carry on with your day in the meantime. Description, the room fell silent. Scarlet looks very uncomfortable, fidgeting in her seat. You'll tell me more about the pocket watch when you're done determining if it's the cursed watch, right? Description, Petora said, yes. Description, Scarlet looks uncertain. She tapped her fingers on the table. Okay, then. I'll get some work done in the meantime so I don't fall behind. Also, I have a spare pair of shoes in the closet here. Description, Petora said, okay. Would you like to use them? I think we're the same size. Description, Petora said, I am wearing shoes already. Description, Petora is wearing boots. Description, Scarlet looks confused. Scarlet's shoes are glowing red, her sensory radius extending underneath Petora's feet. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought I sensed you were barefoot and the floor is pretty cold in here so, ellipsis. Never mind. You're probably wearing very skin-tight shoes. My mistake. Description, Petora paused. Description, she said, my boots are made by illusion magic. I could make them more solid, but it takes more aura. So you are barefoot? Description, Petora said, yeah. My entire outfit is made with illusion magic. Description, Scarlet looks surprised. Her face turned a little red. You mean, you're actually not wearing any real clothes right now? Description, Petora lowered her gaze. She said, my clothes look real so why does it matter to you?
This is a little awkward.
Description, Petora is wearing a blue and green gradient cloak that matched her hair. Well, it's just a thought, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet shook her head. Never mind, ellipsis. I mean, it doesn't matter to me. I can see you anyways so I don't mind. Description, Petora said, if you could see me, then you'll see that I'm wearing clothes. Right. Okay. Anyways, would you like to use my shoes then? Just so your feet don't get cold. Description, Petora said, if you lend me your shoes, you won't see them back. Description, Scarlet paused before walking over to the closet inside the armor room and retrieving her pair of spare shoes. You can have them then. Description, she placed the shoes in front of Petora. You don't have to wear them, but I'll leave them here for you. The floor in here is cold, but at least it's smooth. The ground outside is much rougher and I don't want your feet to get hurt when you leave here today so I hope you take these. Description, Petora looked at the shoes, a simple black pair. She didn't put them on. System message, Scarlet is waiting. I'm not here to cause trouble. I was the one who revived you, Scarlet. And you shouldn't trust Petora. She tried to steal the pocket watch from Luthor when he had it. 1 of 4 respond. Can you ask Petora if her hair colors have any meaning? Illusion clothes sound pretty cool. Does say nothing. Illusion clothes sound pretty cool. Does it mean Petora can change her clothes whenever she likes? 3 of. I'm not here to cause trouble. System. I'm not here to. Can you ask Petora? I'm not
Let's
here
do
to
that
cause.
one.
I'm not here to cause trouble. I was the one who revived you, Scarlet. And you shouldn't trust Petora. She tried to steal the pocket watch from Luthor when he had it. What? Description.
Excuse me.
Scarlet heard your message. She looks. Description. Scarlet heard your message. She looks conflicted. I really wish you could tell me what kind of trouble I'm in, Petora. I'll admit it's been weird hearing a voice in my head, but it hasn't caused me any trouble. At least, nothing that I know of. Description, Petora said, good then. For your sake, I hope this watch isn't the one. Description, Scarlet's brows furrowed. She looks concerned. Okay, so I'm going to clean some armor while you do your thing. Description, Petora said, yes, don't mind me. Description, Scarlet wiped her hands on the towel she kept in the side pocket of her overalls. Description, Scarlet walked towards the row of stained armor. Description, Petora looked down at the pair of shoes that Scarlet laid out for her. Description, Petora said, will it distract you if I ask you questions while you work? Description, Scarlet stopped in front of an armor display stand and looked in Petora's direction. She smiled a little. Not at all. I'm pretty used to cleaning Valdorian armor by now. Description, Petora eyed Scarlet's shoes which are glowing red. She said, do you have some special magically imbued shoes that allow you to see things for what they really are? Description, Petora said, is that how you can tell I'm barefoot? Can you see through all my clothing right now? No. Description, Scarlet's face turned red. She turned in Petora's direction. In a softer tone she said, no. I'm using a spell that allows me to spread out my body heat through my hands or feet. I use it to warm up my surroundings so I can sense the things around me. I can see any details, but I can sense shapes. I sense the shape of your feet. That's how I know you're barefoot. That's how I knew you weren't my brother. His feet are much larger than yours. Description, Scarlet quickly added. And I'm only using enough heat to sense your feet. Nothing else. Description, Petora said, how do I know you're not sensing the rest of me? Why, your feet should be the only part of you that feels a little warmer because I'm warming them up with my spell. Description, Petora looked down at her feet, covered in her illusion boots. Her expression is lifeless. Description, Petora said, can you sense things from behind you too and essentially from all directions? I can. Description, Petora said, that sounds useful for battle. Well, it depends. I can only sense things I can spread my body heat into. And I can only spread my body heat into things that are physically touching something my hands or feet can touch. I can tell you're standing by the door only because your feet are touching the ground, which my shoes are touching, which my feet are touching. Description, Petora walked over to the table and hopped onto it, lifting her feet off the ground. Petora said, are you able to sense me now? I can't. But I sense you walked to the table before your feet disappeared so. Description, Scarlet looks uneasy. I assume you jumped on the table, right? Description, Petora said, yeah. Is there a way for you to sense me on this table even if you didn't know I was here? I can use my hands to touch the table. Or I can continue to use my spell to spread my body heat up the legs of the table to its surface. Both methods would still require me to warm up the surface of the table enough to find the part you're touching in order to know you're there. Description, Scarlet paused, her expression still uneasy. Petora, do your clothes give you some sort of protective barrier for when you, sit on things? Description, Petora said, no, the clothes I'm wearing right now are pure illusion. Oh. Description, the bug from earlier buzzed around Petora. Petora caught it with her free hand. The bug took a bite out of Petora's palm. Description, Petora said, I'm beginning to understand why you had trouble with the insect. When it's flying, it's not making physical contact with anything. The bug? Description, Petora said, I overheard you earlier admitting defeat to the bug that bit you. Description, Scarlet cringed as she scratched her bug bites. Description, Petora hopped off the table and walked over to the window. She opened her hand, letting the bug free outside. She looked longingly at the bug as it took hold of its freedom and flew away. How do your powers work, Petora? Description, Petora said, I can look or sound like anyone I want.
Okay, that's kind of creepy and cool at the same time.
Description, Petora lowered her gaze. She saw her reflection in the pocket watch she is holding. She said, but everything chips away at my aura, especially to make things solid. Description, Scarlet's expression softened as she heard the sad tone of Petora's voice. Are you okay, Petora? Is there some trouble you're experiencing with your aura? Description, Petora looked down at the pair of shoes Scarlet left out for her. For a moment she looked lonely. Description, Petora said, people's auras recharge by themselves or with potions, but only Master can recharge my aura. Description, Scarlet paused. I've never heard of something like that. Did you consult a healer about your aura? Description, Petora said, healers can't help me. Maybe the only person that can help me is First Mage Ezra. Do you think the First Mage is alive? Description, Petora said, Master didn't tell me so I don't know. I hope he is alive. Description, Scarlet's expression softened as she smiled. The magic I'm using right now is possible because of him. I would really like the opportunity to thank him in person. Description, Petora looked back at Scarlet. Description, Scarlet is placing her hand on the armor set in front of her. She felt her way up the armor until she touched the helmet. Description, Petora said, you're just feeling the armor regularly with your hand right now, am I right? You're not using your body heat? Why yeah, good noticing. I like conserving my body heat when I don't need to use it. Old habit you could say? Description, Petora said, I see. Kind of like me. Description, Petora smiled a little. Scarlet smiled too. Yeah, it's like how you conserve your aura. I use aura too obviously in order to turn my body heat into magic. Aura and body heat kind of mean the same things to me nowadays. Description, Scarlet walked back to the table with cleaning supplies. Description, Scarlet took out the towel from the side pocket of her overalls and gave the whole table a good wipe down. Description, Scarlet paused. Description, she gave the table another good wipe down before she placed down the helmet.
Ooh, my stomach's growling again.
Description, Petora near the table. She said, have you ever run out of body heat? Oh, that was one of my worst fears before I learned how to manage my powers. In the beginning, I had little control over how much heat I was using for everything and I would end up running low quickly. I was on the wait list for a trained wolf pup for the blind, but that never came through. So I would carry a cane as backup and it helped that my brother was always with me before to help me whenever I needed it. Description, Scarlet smiled. But I haven't been afraid of running out of body heat in an ordinary day for a long time. Description, Petora's smile faded. She said, you seem to have very good control over your spell. What's your spell called? The spell I'm using right now is Incendiatos Melior Magnus, Illuminate. Description, Petora said, oh, a fire-based spell. It must take a lot of precision and control to not burn up your surroundings with it. Description, Scarlet laughed. Yeah, it took a lot of practice, but my brother helped me through it. Description, Petora said, you seem very close with your brother. Yeah. Description. In a soft voice, Petora said, "You have a nice life, Scarlet." Description. Scarlet smiled. Yeah, I feel lucky. Description. Petora stared down at the pair of shoes that Scarlet gave her. Description. Petora's appearance began to change, until she looked like Scarlet from head to toe in her work uniform. Description. Petora slipped into the shoes that Scarlet laid out for her. Oh, you're wearing the shoes. Description. Petora said, "Yeah, thanks." System message. Scarlet is waiting. Whoa. So Petora just transformed into you, Scarlet. 1 of 4 response. Ezra is alive. I met him. 2 of 4. How old is Petora? Saying nothing. System mess. Whoa. So Petora just transformed into you, Scarlet. 1 of 4 responses. Messages. A monochrome
That's
icon
kinda
style.
cool.
Description. Scarlet heard your message. Description. She looks confused. Description. Petora said, "Are you okay, Scarlet?" Description. Petora said, "Are you okay, Scarlet? You seem a little distracted just now." There was a bug flying in here earlier. I thought I heard it again. Description. Petora said, "I caught it and let it go outside already." Description. Scarlet bit her lower lip. Oh, thanks. So that was why you walked over to the window. I guess I was just imagining the sound then. Are you done with the watch yet, Petora? Description. Petora said, "Not yet. Go ahead with the armor. You picked a really dirty helmet, by the way." Description. Scarlet is standing in front of the table, the stained helmet laid out in front of her. Well, this is just the helmet from the next set of armor I'm scheduled to clean. Description. Scarlet reached for the top corner of the table where a bottle filled with an orange liquid stood. The cleaning supplies are laid out vertically near the edge of the table. Description. She picked up the bottle, squirted the orange liquid twice in her other hand and placed the bottle back in the corner of the table. Next, she started rubbing the liquid over the helmet. Description. Petora, looking like Scarlet, stood next to her watching her clean the armor. Description. Petora said, "Where did you grow up?" Ravenswood. It's a quiet village by a river. You probably never heard of it. Description. Petora said, "You're right. I haven't. Do you live there now?" No, my brother and I actually live in one of the housing blocks provided by Volder for cheap to its workers. Description. Scarlet stopped rubbing the helmet, which is now fully covered in a liquid sheen. She wiped her hands on the towel in the side pocket of her overalls before reaching over to the item underneath the bottle of orange liquid, a dial timer. Description. She turned the dial. The dial began to move, making clicking sounds as it went. Like the bottle, Scarlet returned the timer to the same spot she picked it up from. Description. Scarlet let the helmet rest as the dial counted down. Description. Petora said, "Are the rooms provided by Volder nice?" "Oh yes. Nice and modern. But my brother and I are thinking of moving to Windsor Hall one day." Description. Petora said, "Windsor Hall? What's it like there?" "It's a lot different from these parts. It never rains in Windsor Hall and it's always hot. And they have very strict rules around water." Description. Petora said, "Why do you want to move there?" "I never cared much for rain and being in a hot place will allow me to recharge my body heat quicker. And it'll be closer to my guild." Description. Petora said, "Is it far away from here?" Description. The dial chimed and stopped rotating. Scarlet immediately reached over to the item underneath the dial, a scouring pad. Description. She began rubbing the helmet with the pad in a mechanical and meticulous manner. Yeah, a lot farther. But nothing is final right now. We are just playing with the idea of moving. Description. Petora looked down at her reflection in the pocket watch. She still looks like Scarlet. Petora smiled. Description. She said, "Have you fallen in love before?" Description. Scarlet chuckled nervously as she scrubbed the helmet. "I've had boyfriends, but I've never fallen for any of them romantically. No. I'm beginning to wonder if my heart has space for more people than the ones I already love." Description. Scarlet looks a little sad. "I hope so, but at this point, I'm not so sure it does have more space. Have you fallen in love before, Petora?" Description. Petora continued to look at her reflection in the watch. She said, "No, I haven't." Description. Petora said, "I don't have anyone that I love. Would you like to fall in love someday?" Description. Petora paused and said, "I don't want to get my hopes up." Description. Scarlet finished scrubbing the helmet with the scouring pad. She placed the scouring pad back into position underneath the dial timer. Then she grabbed the bottle of orange liquid above the dial timer again. Description. She squirted the liquid twice in her other hand and placed the bottle back at the top of the cleaning materials lineup. Then she started rubbing the liquid over the helmet for a second round. Description. Scarlet continued to rub liquid over the helmet. "Do you know how much longer it'll be until you're done with the watch?" Description. Scarlet looks nervous and eager. Description. Petora looked down at her shoes, the pair Scarlet gave her. Description. Petora said, "I don't know how much longer, but I hope it's soon." Description. The helmet is now covered in a liquid sheen again. Scarlet wiped her hands on the towel in the side pocket of her overalls and reached for the dial timer, repeating the same process with the timer and letting the helmet rest. Description. Petora said, "I know the waiting is hard, but I'll let you know as soon as I know, okay?" Description. Scarlet took a deep breath and smiled a little. "Thanks, Petora." Description. As the helmet rested, Petora left Scarlet's side and walked around the room with the pocket watch in her hand. Description. She looked at the name tags hanging off the armor. Description. Petora said, "Are you able to read the name tags attached to these armors?" "Yeah, if I warm up the tag enough I can sense the shape of the cutout." Description. The dial timer chimed and stopped. Scarlet picked up the scouring pad and went to work on the helmet for a second round with the pad. Though, if things are bunched together, it gets hard for me to tell individual shapes. Description: a knock came on the door of the armor room. A male voice said, Scarlet, I'm here to pick up my armor. Description: Scarlet looks panicked as her head turned in Petora's direction. Description: Petora's appearance changed already. She is now wearing a full... Description: Petora's appearance changed already. Description: the pocket watch has been concealed as well underneath Petora's illusion. Description: Petora's appearance changed already. She is now wearing a full suit of Valdorian armor. Petora said, go ahead and let him in. I look like a Valdorian now. Description:
Okay, that's
the pocket
cool.
watch has been concealed as well underneath Petora's illusion. Description: the pocket watch has been concealed as well underneath Petora's illusion. Description: Scarlet looks nervous, but another knock came on the door. The male voice said, Scarlet, are you there? Yeah, come in. Description: the door opened revealing a large, muscular Valdorian in civilian clothes. He said, hi, Scarlet. I hope I didn't catch you at a bad time. Not at all. Welcome. Please go ahead and look. Description: Scarlet held her breath. Description: the Valdor. Description: the Vault. Description: Description: Val. Description: Val. Catherine nodded. Said, Descript 2. Scarlet. Vertical scroll box. 100. Petora changed. Yawn. Good job, Scarlet. It was cool seeing you clean the helmet. 1 of 4 was yawn. Petora changed her appearance to look like you again, Scarlet. I don't know. Say nothing. Good job, Scarlet. It was cool seeing you clean the helmet. 1 of 4 was good job. Response. Description: Scarlet heard your message. Description: Petora, are you done with the pocket watch yet? Description: Petora said, not yet. Description: she paused before saying, Scarlet, do you feel special now that you hear a voice in your head? Description: Scarlet looks surprised. What do you mean by that? Description: Petora said, do you feel special that this watch chose you and only you can hear the voice? Description: Scarlet paused. I already feel special, with or without the watch. I have the most wonderful brother to love and care for. I have 2 jobs that I love that allow me to meet new people and visit new places, so my life is never boring. There are still things I want to do in this life, but feeling special is not one of them because I already do. Description: Petora said, and what do you want to do the most in life right now? I want to cook dinner for my brother when he comes home from his quest tonight. I want to make him all his favorite foods so he can relax and enjoy after a hard day's work. Description: Petora smiled a little and said, I think your brother is very lucky to have you as a sister. Description: Petora paused. She said, thank you for letting me walk in your shoes for a little bit. No problem. Description: Petora said, you have such a beautiful life, Scarlet. Description: Scarlet smiled. It's a simple life, but I'm happy. Description: Petora changed back to her own appearance and took off Scarlet's shoes. Did you take off the shoes? I said you can keep them. Description: Petora said, thank you, but I can't. Description: Petora said, listen, Scarlet, I'm still not done with the pocket watch, but I want to let you know what I know. Description: Petora said, it's not much. My master only allows me to know so much, but I want to tell you. Description: Scarlet looks surprised. I'd like that. Description: Petora said, this watch used to belong to Luthor Timecrest. Oh, so this watch does belong to Luthor. Why is it teleporting to me now? Description: Petora shook her head and said, I don't know. But if this watch is the one, then Luthor's curse is now your curse, Scarlet. Description: Petora looked down at the watch. She said, if this watch is the one, then it connects to Chronos Timecrest, the first human and time manipulator. He is a very bad man.
Why?
Description: Scarlet covered her mouth. She moved over to the stool by her table and sat down.
Actually, no, wait, that makes sense.
You mean the voice in my head? Description, Petora said, yes. It could belong to Chrono's Timecrest. Description, Scarlet trembled. You said he's a bad man. What did he do that is bad? Description, Petora said, he will try to use you to destroy our world. Description, Scarlet gulped. She covered her mouth.
Ow! Sorry, guys. I was trying to get that fly out of here.
Destroy our world? How? Description, Petora said, I don't know. Well, ellipsis. What should I do? As you know, it's not like I can get rid of the watch. Description, Petora said, in order to sever the connection to Chronos, all you have to do is keep the pocket watch closed. Description, Scarlet furrowed her brows. That seems easy. Description, Petora said, Chronos is very manipulative, so even if you think it's easy to cut him out of your life, be careful, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet paused. She lowered. Description, Scarlet paused. She lowered her head. I knew Luthor hated me.
There we go.
Description, Petora said, why would I hate you? I tried to kill him when he spared my life. I've been meaning to apologize to him and his mom, but I'm, ellipsis, too scared to face them. Messages, now, Travis I've been meaning to notification. Messages, now, Travis Shaner, do you need a ride tonight? Messages, now, return.
Nope, come up. My dad will be taking me.
Inserted note, my dad will be taking me. Send, button, sent message. Dictate, button. Timecrest, I tried to kill him.
Okay, sorry, guys. I had a message come through.
I've been meaning to apologize to him and his mom, but I'm, ellipsis, too scared to face them. Luthor sent me the pocket watch, didn't he? He's still angry with me, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. I suppose if he wanted to curse me, I deserve it. Description, Petora walked up to Scarlet and knelt in front of her. Petora placed one hand on Scarlet's. She said, I don't know if Luthor sent you this watch, but you should stay away from him. Why? Are you suggesting Luthor is working with Chronos to destroy our world? Because if you are, I don't believe that. Luthor is a good person. Description, Petora said, I just think that your life will be happier and more peaceful without Luthor Timecrest. Description, Scarlet took a deep breath. No offense, Petora, but how can I trust what you say? Description, Petora said, my orders were to assess the watch and report back to Master first before telling you anything. Description, Petora said, but then. Description, in a sincere and sad tone, Petora said, but then I wanted to help you. Description, Scarlet's expression softened. Description, Petora said, you don't have to trust me, Scarlet. Description, Petora said, and I hope this watch didn't belong to Luthor. I hope instead someone cast a spell and you're just hearing a harmless voice in your head. Description, Scarlet clasped her hands together. When you say the first human, do you mean the first human to come to Elysia? Description, Petora said, yes, Chronos Timecrest is the first human that first Mage Ezra brought to Elysia. But doesn't that mean he's really old? Description, Petora said, he is immortal, unfortunately. You mean, I could have been talking to the very first human who ever came to Elysia this whole time? Description, Petora said, it's possible. So it's important for you to never speak to the voice in your head anymore. Keep the watch. Description, Scarlet looks disturbed. Description, Petora said, when I overheard you, it almost sounded like you were trying to make friends with the voice. Description, Petora said, I hope that's not the case. Description, Scarlet shook her head. You have nothing to worry about there. I would prefer not to have a random voice in my head. Description, Scarlet sighed. Honestly, it feels like a stranger is living inside my head. Description, Petora nodded and said, good. Then it should be easy for you to close the watch and never open it again. System message, Scarlet is waiting. I'm not Chronos. I hope you're not just going to take Petora's word for then close the watch. Even though it's a strange situation, I hope we can still become friends. 1 of 5 response. Is that how you really feel about me? 2 of 5. I'm sorry I made you a Timecrest. It seems like I'm really missing Luthor right about now. Say nothing. I'm really missing Luthor right about now.
What in the
System
world?
message. I'm not Chronos.
I'm gonna do
I
that
hope-
one.
I'm not Chronos. I hope you're not just going to take response. Description, Scarlet sighed again. At this point, I'm not sure what to do with the pocket watch. Description, Petora began to emit a soft white glow. She said, Scarlet, it's time. I'm about to find out if the watch belongs to Luthor or not. Description, Scarlet looks tense.
It is.
Okay, how do you tell? Description, Petora said, I'm beginning to glow. It's white now, but if it changes to red, then you should put the pocket watch away and never open it again. Description, Petora said, otherwise, it will bring you unhappiness. Description, the glow began to brighten. Description, Petora said, it's getting close. I'll let you description, YouTube.
Ah.
Now, red sir. Description, Petora said, it's getting close. I'll let you know, ellipsis. Description, the glow changed to red.
Oh, no.
Description, Petora trembled. Her stoic expression changed to fear. Description, Petora closed the pocket watch. System 23 hours. Skip timer for one skip. Skip timer
Let's
for one
skip
skip
it then.
crystal. Description, one. Description, back. Chapter 13.
Jeez.
Description, Petora closed the pocket. System message, connection. Description, 1 week passed. Description, the pocket watch clicked open. Description, Scarlet is clad from head to toe in Valdorian armor holding the pocket watch in her armored hands. Description, Scarlet paced around the empty armor room, her armored shoes glowing red, absorbed in her thoughts. Okay, you have the armor on. Time to go find Luthor. Description, Scarlet paused. What do I say to Luthor when I see him?
I'm confused.
Description, she closed the pocket watch.
Again?
System description, the pocket watch clicked open. System message, connection lost. Description, Scarlet is still pacing around, a pensive look on her face as she fidgeted with the watch in her hands. Just say to Luthor, is this your pocket watch, sir? Description, Scarlet cringed.
Who's she talking to?
Why are you calling him sir? Description, she closed the pocket watch. System message, connection lost. YouTube, now, planet. Description, the pocket watch clicked open. Description, YouTube, now,
Ah!
watch. Description, the ill-fitting armor creaked with each movement Scarlet made as she continued to pace while fidgeting with the watch in her hands. Disguising yourself is a silly idea, Scar. You could end up getting fired if you get caught borrowing Valdorian armor.
I guess that's Soul.
Description, Scarlet sounded nervous. What if Petora is lying? You couldn't find any information on this Chronos Timecrest she spoke of. And nothing bad has happened to you right now. In fact, the voice in your head did keep you company during lunch at one time, ellipsis. But then again, ellipsis. Petora sounded so sincere when she said she wanted to help you. And the fact that she even showed up means there must be something off with this watch, right? Description, Scarlet sighed. Well, it should be clear by now that you're not going to solve this by talking to yourself. You need to go see Luthor. Description, Scarlet took a deep breath. What if Luthor is in some sort of trouble and there's something you can do to help? You owe it to his mom and him for sparing your life, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet shook her head, her helmet creaking. If only you hadn't tried to burn him alive. But it's okay, you had your disguise. Luthor may not want to talk to Scarlet, but you're not Scarlet. You're a Valdorian guard now. Just find Luthor and ask him some questions about the watch as a Valdorian guard. See where it leads. Description, Scarlet closed the pocket watch. System message, connection lost. Description, the pocket watch clicked open.
What is going on here? Why do they keep closing and opening it?
Description,
I don't
Scarlet is standing in front of the door.
What door?
I could do it. I can't. Description, Scarlet is standing in front of the door. Luthor hates me. I can face him. Description, Scarlet's breathing became labored underneath her helmet. Maybe if you can just force yourself to forget about the watch and never open it again, nothing bad will ever happen. Petora sounded trustworthy, right? Description, Scarlet shook her head, causing her helmet to rattle. Description, Scarlet cringed as she stopped shaking her head. All this rattling is giving me a headache. Well, if you're not going to see Luthor today, then you should get out of this armor before someone catches you in it. System message, Scarlet is waiting. Hey Scarlet. Good to see you again. I hope I can keep you company during more lunches. 1 of 4 response. I don't think Luthor blames you for what you did to him during the Valdorian mage trials. I know him. He's pretty reasonable. 2 of 4 responses. Button. I wish you spent less time talking about Luthor and just go see him. 3 of 4 responses. Button. Say nothing. Hey Scarlet. Good. I don't think Luthor blames you for what you did to him during the Valdorian mage trials. I know him. He's pretty reasonable. 2 of 4 responses. Button.
Here's my question though. I don't know.
I don't think Luthor blames you for what you did to him during the Valdorian mage trials. I know him. I don't think Luthor blames you for what you... Responded. Description, Scarlet looked startled as she dropped the watch. The watch fell to the ground, lid still open. Did I just hear? Description, Scarlet's breath caught in her throat and her expression changed to panic. Oh no, did I open the watch? Description, Scarlet's armor boots started to glow red. Description, she jumped a little when a loud knock came on the door. Description, a woman's voice came from outside. She said, hello? Scarlet, are you in there? I'm here to pick up my armor for my shift. Description, Scarlet gulped from inside her armor and tried not to make another sound. Description, Scarlet jumped again when she heard a loud tapping coming from the window near the door. Description, the woman said, guard, can you open the door? I'm here to pick up my armor. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. In a faint voice she said, Yes, I'm coming. Description: Scarlet made her way to the door. She took a deep breath and turned off the glowing of her boots before she opened the door. Description: the middle-aged Valdorian woman walked over. She is dressed in civilian clothes that showed off her toned muscular physique. Description: when she reached the front door, the Valdorian raised her wrist showing off her Valdorian tattoo. She said, "Our blood blesses us." Description: Scarlet took another deep breath and continuing in her feigned voice, she said, "It flows for Volder." Description: the Valdorian said, "Did you lock the door?" Description: the Valdorian said, "Scarlet usually keeps the door unlocked so people can pick up their armors even when she's on break, but it was locked today. Did you lock? Yeah. I must have locked it by accident." Description: the Valdorian walked over to the row of cleaned armors and looked for her name tag. She stopped in front of the name tag Valoris. Description: Valoris said, "Want to hear something gross?" Ellipsis. Description: Valoris said, "A human spit on my armor." Description: Valoris said, "He wasn't doing it on purpose." YouTube. Description: Valoris said,
Here we go.
"He wasn't doing it on purpose. He tried to strike up a conversation with me while I was on patrol and he talked so fast that specks of spit kept flying out of his mouth. When I saw the spit, I backed up, but it was too late." Description:
Oof.
Valoris shuddered and said, "I'm pretty sure I was it." Description: she shuddered again and said, "I'm glad we are provided with an extra set of armor for quarantine zone use, but I kind of want to burn this armor." Description: Valoris started putting on her armor. She said, "Oh well, at least Scarlet does her duty like a Valdorian. I feel awful to make her clean my messenger." Description:
People, stop
Valoris
messaging,
started putting on
please.
her armor. She said, "Oh well, at least Scarlet does her duty like a Valdorian. I feel awful to make her clean my armor again after she already cleaned it earlier this week." Description: despite the nervous look on her face, Scarlet smiled. Description: Valoris said, "We're not paying her enough to be around these humans. That's for sure." Description: Valoris sighed and said, "If there were only more octopuses to go around. I've always felt it was wrong to put people's lives at risk just so we can keep these zones clean for the humans to live in." Description: Valoris' voice went from friendly to bitter. Description: Valoris said, "I really do hate being around these humans." Description: Valoris continued to put on her armor. She said, "I hate pretending to be nice to people who are trying to kill us. I hate seeing wretched humans eat our food and live their lives in comfort inside these quarantine zones." Description: Valoris' voice went from bitter to cold. Scarlet shivered, causing her armor to make some noise. Description: Valoris eyed Scarlet and said, "You're awfully quiet." Description: Scarlet held her breath. Description: Valoris returned to putting on her armor as she said, "Heh, you remind me of my boyfriend. I would talk and talk and talk and he'd just listen." Description: Valoris paused. She said, "How do you feel about the humans?" Description: Scarlet took a deep breath. Continuing in her feigned voice, she said, "Well, ellipsis, it's true humans live quite a nice life inside the quarantine zones, but they don't have their freedom." Description: Valoris sneered. She said, "If it were up to me, they'd lose a lot more than their freedom. But there hasn't been any definitive proof that humans did start the Valdorian disease." Description: Valoris shook her head and said, "You sound like Princess Riley. I won't speak ill of our princess, but I also don't want to wait around for definitive proof when Valdorians are dying." Description: Valoris said, "Also, how do you explain that no human has ever gotten sick from the disease?" Ellipsis, I don't have an answer for that. It's just that I know humans who are very kind and could never have started something like the Valdorian disease. Even if it was a human who started the disease, I don't think it's fair to lock everyone one up for one person's misdeeds." Description: Valoris stopped putting on her armor and eyed Scarlet with a stoic expression. The Valdorian frowned and said, "So you're a human sympathizer? I haven't met one in quite a while." Description: Scarlet cringed at the angry tone of the Valdorian's voice. Description: Valoris continued to put on her armor, but in silence. Description:
Whoops, wrong way.
After a long silence, Valoris said, "You haven't lost anyone to the Valdorian disease, have you?" Description: Scarlet took a deep breath. "No, I've been lucky." Description: Valoris said, "Yes, you have been. I lost my boyfriend to the disease." Description: The pace at which Valoris put on her armor quickened. She said, "I don't like being in the same room as a human sympathizer. I don't get how you can defend people who are trying to harm us." Description: Valoris said, "I'm telling you this, I'm still here, because Wing Commander Valdem believes we should not scorn our own even if they are human sympathizers." Description: A look of surprise crossed Scarlet's face underneath her helmet. "You mean High Commander Valdem's son? The one who does the This Is Walder broadcasts for the quarantine zones?" Description: Valoris said, "Yes. Wing Commander Valdem lost his mother to the Valdorian disease. He might actually hate humans more than me, and you know his father is King Janna's most trusted ally." Oh, ellipsis, I didn't realize he hated humans so much. He always...
I keep going too
ellipsis,
far.
I
It's
didn't realize he hated humans
fast.
so much. He always sounds so friendly on his broadcasts. Description: Valoris said, the mind of a human sympathizer is naive indeed." Description: Valoris said, "The Wing Commander is doing his duty. He pushes his own pain aside to make humans laugh even though it probably kills him on the inside. I have high respect for him." Description: Valoris finished dressing. She walked over to Scarlet and said, "Listen, you, humans are playing on our kindness and leniency and unfortunately for us we fell right into their trap." Description, Valor said, "And as long as humans exist, none of us will be safe." Description, Valor's tone sounded angry. Description, Valor said, "Wing Commander Valdem is seeking more punishment for humans. A naive human sympathizer might not know this, but you're in the minority." More punishment for humans? What kind of punishment are you talking about? I thought the quarantine zones were already sufficient punishment. Description, Valorous laughed and said, "You call having all your needs provided for punishment?" Description, Valorous neared Scarlet even more. Scarlet gulped. Description, Valor said, "My boyfriend was a shy person who got nervous talking to the person who sold us groceries." Description, Valor said, "But he would die for Volder without hesitation. He would die for you, like I would die for you, like any Voldorian would." Messenger. Description, Valor said, "Like I said, a naive human sympathizer might not know this, but you're in the minority. Most Voldorians are tired. We want more justice against humans." Description, Valor said, "As for you, I pray you will wake up and stop trying to be kind to these humans who are aiming to kill us, before it's too late." Description, Valor said, "Don't forget who you are." Description, Valorous cleared her throat. She said, "I'm glad for my helmet. At least I don't have to talk to humans with a smile, just a friendly voice." Description, Valor's voice sounded friendly again as she exited the armor room. Description, Scarlet waited for a bit before closing the door. Description, Scarlet shook her head. There was so much hate in her voice, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet trembled inside her borrowed armor. Thank goodness she didn't notice I didn't have a Voldorian tattoo. I wonder how they are going to punish humans more. I have a bad feeling about this, ellipsis. System message, I have a bad feeling about this too. I don't want to see anyone get hurt. One of two saying nothing. I have a bad feeling. I have a bad feeling about this too. I don't want to see it. Description, Scarlet heard your message. Description, she looks nervous. Where did I drop that pocket watch? Description, Scarlet's sensory radius extended across the floor. Description, the door of the armory opened and Soul barged in. Description, Soul said, "Scar, something terrible happened." Description, Soul is wearing the iconic gold rank red cloak, which is made out of the finest materials. The fit looks comfortable, with lots of room so movement. Description, Soul blinked at Scarlet who is still dressed in Voldorian armor. He said, "Soul." Description, Soul blinked at Scarlet who is still dressed in Voldorian armor. He said, "Guard, do you know where my sister, Scarlet Ignis, is?" She clicked. "Soul, it's me. I'm inside the armor." "What's wrong? Tell me." Description, Soul paused. He said, "What are you doing in Voldorian armor, Scar? Is this what you do when I'm not here?" "Well, I was trying to return the pocket watch to Luthor." Description, Soul said, "Why do you need to dress up in armor to go see Luthor?" "I'm, ellipsis, afraid to face him." Description, Soul shouted, "He should be afraid to face us." "That's not how I feel, but forget about Luthor." Description, Soul said, "You bet I'm going to forget about that guy. Luthor Timecrest is nothing but a messenger."
People, stop texting,
Soul
please.
said, "You bet I'm going to forget about that guy. Luthor Timecrest is nothing but a speck and I can't believe you still haven't given his stupid, darn watch back to him yet." Description, Soul said, "Where's the watch? Give it." Description, Soul rolled up his sleeves and said, "Though I'll probably not hit his head since it's just a speck." "No, don't touch the watch. I'll take care of it. You shouldn't bother." Description, Soul said, "Yeah, make sure to hit him hard with the watch, Scar. He deserves a beating for putting some crazy voice in your head. Just tell me what happened on your day. You weren't supposed to be back from your quest until later today." Description, Soul said, "Why are women so complicated?" Description, he sounded distraught. Description, Scarlet rushed over to Soul. "Is this about, ellipsis, Rita? Did some..." Description, Soul said, "Somehow, her group and my group ended up in the same town." "Is this
Wait.
about, ellipsis, Rita? Did something happen between you two?" Description, Soul said, "Somehow, her group and my group ended up in the same town for a quest." Description, Soul said, "So it was obvious to me what was happening." Description, Scarlet looks confused. "What was obvious?" Description, Soul shouted, "She was following me, Scar, try to keep up." "I don't think." Description, Soul said, "Then I remembered you told me she wanted to tell me something at the Praise the Twin Tail Messenger. Now." Description, Soul said, "Then I remembered you told me she wanted to tell me something at the Praise the Twin Tail concert. That was before you told her that you were glad she got burned by Ruby Dragon, ellipsis." Description, Soul said, "Well, I figured since she was following me, she still wanted to tell me the thing. Soul, I don't think Rita was following you." Description, Soul crossed his arms and tapped his feet on the ground. He didn't. Description, Soul said, "So I went out to her and said hello in my friendliest voice." Description, Soul shouted, "But then." Description, Soul's shoulders slumped down. Description, Soul said, "But then, she just gave me this hurt look, stood up and left." Description, Soul swallowed hard and said, "I couldn't concentrate on the quest after it, so I bailed and came back here to talk to you." Description, Soul covered his face with his hand. He said, "What if I lose her, Scar? What if I lose Rita for real?" Description, Scarlet reached over to Soul, found his shoulder and rubbed it gently. Description, Soul lowered his hands. Soul looks miserable as he said, I miss her, Scar. I miss talking to her and seeing her every day. Soul, why did you break up with Rita?
Why did the music pause?
Description, Soul said, I wanted her to come back to me. What, ellipsis, does that mean? Description, Soul shouted, it was a test, Scar. Description, Soul said, I was testing her love for me, ellipsis, if I broke up with her, and she begged me to take her back, then I was going to marry her. That's why you broke up with Rita? To test her? Description, Soul frowned at Scarlet and said, I can hear the judginess in your voice. Description, Soul frowned at Scarlet and said, description, he flicked the Voldorian armor Scarlet is wearing with his finger. Soul said, my sister, who is standing in a full suit of stolen Voldorian armor, before me is judging me. I don't judge you for being a thief or a coward, Scar, so don't you dare get all judgy on me. Description, Soul said, I did a smart thing with Rita. Description, Soul spat out these words. Description, Soul said, if only we tested Luthor's darn mom, ellipsis. Description, he said, if only we had tested her love for us when she was your teacher. Description, Soul scowled and said, maybe we would have realized sooner that she never saw us as her real family. Description, Soul said, then I wouldn't have had to see you cry and cry after she left us. Description, Scarlet took a deep breath. Soul, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to come off as judgy. I love you. I'm just confused why you had to test Rita's love when her love for you was so clear. Description, Soul sighed and said, I thought there wasn't much risk to test her love if she loved me. Description, Soul said, you know what? I bet she was going to beg to come back to me at the Praise the Twin Tail concert. Don't you think so, Scar? We shouldn't assume what Rita was going to do, Soul. Description, Soul sighed and repeated, what if I lose her, Scar? What if I lose Rita for real? Description, Scarlet continued to rub Soul's shoulder. You still have a chance with Rita, brother. When she took me to see Guildmaster's Aunt Claire, she told me she still loved you. Description, Soul's eyes widened. He said, I knew it. Description, a big smile spread across his face as Soul grabbed Scarlet, in full armor, lifted her into the air and spun her around once. Scarlet looked surprised as the armor creaked at this movement. Description, Soul said, you're a genius for talking to her, Scar.
That was quickly changed.
Have you been working out, brother? This armor is pretty heavy, ellipsis. Description, Soul said, your brother is pretty strong. Got to look good for Rita. Description, Soul put Scarlet down on the ground and said, so, tell me how to fix things with her. How do I get Rita to come back to me, Scar? First, you should apologize for saying to her that you're glad she got burned. Description, Soul paused. He started pacing around the room, his hands making random motions in the air as he said, that's crazy, Scar. Rita should know I didn't mean what I said. I would never want her to get hurt. She should know. Rita also knows you don't like apologizing. So it'll show that you care a lot about her if you do. After that, you should tell her the truth about why you broke up with her and apologize for that. Description, Soul stopped pacing around. He shook his head and said, that sounds like a horrible idea to me. That'll make me— well, you need to make an effort if you want Rita to forgive you. She will probably be angry that you tried to test her, but Rita loves you so she can probably forgive you for it if you're honest. Description, Soul continued to shake his head. He said, I don't like your idea, Scar. I'm going to go get a second opinion. From who? Description, Soul said, I'm going to go ask some of the Voldorian female guards around for their opinion.
I don't think that's a good idea.
Description, Soul said, there has to be a way to make Rita come to me, rather than me go to her. Soul, ellipsis. Description, Soul said, okay, I'm heading out. I'll come back for you later and we can go home together. Description, he paused and pulled out a shirt with Praise the Twin Tail lettering in rainbow, holographic print. The shirt is also decorated with rhinestones, sparkling under the light of the armor room. Description, he put the shirt into Scarlet's hand and said, good, it's not too wrinkled. I got you a shirt for the upcoming concert. Description, Scarlet felt the rhinestones. She said, so, you got the rhinestone one. Isn't that the most expensive one? Description, Soul smiled and said, it is. I told you I'd buy you all the nice clothes you want. And I have to because you keep spending your budget on back turbans. But you're planning to propose an invention to the Masters Council soon. We need the gold to hire people to make your invention after you come up with what it is. Description, Soul said, you said you wanted a shirt for the concert. I got you one. Just enjoy what your big brother got you and let me worry about the gold problems. Description, Scarlet smiled as she felt the soft shirt in her hands. Thank you, brother. Description, Soul said, on that note, I'm going to quit this stupid job. Description, Scarlet looks crushed. You're going to quit this job? Description, Soul said, yeah, I have better things to do with my time now than clean up after humans and Voldorians. But you have already reduced the number of shifts you're taking. And the pay is still really good. Description, Soul shook his head and said, I'll just do more gold level quests to make up for it.
Wow.
Oh. Description, Soul said, you should quit this job too, Scar. It's beneath us Igneses. But I do like working here. Cleaning armor helps relax me. And we wouldn't be able to get Valdorian housing for free if I quit too. Description, Soul shook his head and said, Scar, when are you going to listen to my good advice? If you listened to my advice, you would be promoted like me. Description, Soul said, anyways, I'm going to talk to the guards. Can you make your spicy noodles for dinner? Sure, of course. Do you want me to come with you when you talk to the guards? Description, Soul said, nah, I'm good by myself. Description, Scarlet furrowed her brows underneath her helmet. Description, Soul turned around and left. Description, Scarlet hugged the shirt to her. She sighed, a sad look on her face as she closed the door of the armor room. System message, Scarlet is waiting. Sorry your brother is leaving you behind. I'm here to listen if you need to talk. 1 of 5 hope you enjoy your new shirt, Scarlet. 2 of 5. Hey, Scarlet, can you open the watch at the Praise the Twin Tails concert? I'm really tired of being ignored. System, sorry your brother is leaving you behind. I'm here to listen if you need to talk.
Here we
Sorry
go.
your brother is leaving you behind. Response, description, Scarlet heard your message. She looks perplexed. You really do sound nice. But maybe you're just trying to trick me. What am I doing? I shouldn't be talking to you. Description, Scarlet walked over to where she dropped the watch. She bent down and picked up the watch. Description, Scarlet started to close the watch. Description, a gust of wind blew into the room. Description, a young man's voice said, wait, don't close the watch, Scarlet.
Who's that?
Description, Scarlet froze. The lid of the watch remained open. Scarlet's shoes are glowing, but she doesn't sense another pair of shoes in the room. Who's there? Description, the gust of wind changed into a tall and slender young man. The young man wore dark pants and a shirt underneath a white jacket. Description, he had soft blonde hair and deep violet eyes. WA business.
Who is it?
Description, Scarlet looks confused. She does not recognize the young man's shoes. Description, still disguised in Valdorian armor, Scarlet cleared her throat and in a faint voice she said, are you here to pick up your armor? The armor cleaner is on a break, but she keeps things pretty organized so you can find your own armor easily like I did. Description, the young man's violet eyes rested on the pocket watch in Scarlet's hand. A mix of emotions crossed his face.
Ezra.
Description, the young man said, Scarlet, this is Luthor Timecrest.
What?
Description, Scarlet gulped. I'm sorry, ellipsis. Did you say you were, ellipsis? Description, Scarlet gulped again. Luthor Timecrest? Description, Luthor said, yeah. I know my appearance is sudden, but I need to talk to you, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet felt her stomach churn. How did you get in here? I didn't hear the door opening. Description, Luthor said, I used my light air spell to turn into wind and get through the door. Description, Scarlet shook her head, her helmet rattling. Scarlet isn't here. I told you, she's on her break. Description, Luthor said, Scarlet, I see my pocket. Description, Luthor paused before he said, I see the pocket watch in your hand, and your shoes are glowing. I remember your shoes glowed from the Valdorian trials. Description, Scarlet felt the blood drain from her face. Description, Scarlet opened the door of the armor room, dashed outside and shut the door behind her, leaving Luthor inside. System message, Scarlet is waiting. I'm so happy to see Luthor. I hope you give him a chance to talk to you, Scarlet. He can tell you all about the pocket watch. 1 of 4 response. I really don't think Luthor is angry with you. 2 of 4 Are you okay, Scarlet? Say nothing. I really don't think Luthor is angry with you. 2 of 4 responses. I really don't think Luthor is angry with you. Response, how do you know that? Description, Luthor said, good. You're still there. Please don't run away. I won't come out. Description, Scarlet sighed as she continued to press her back against the door from the outside. Description, he stopped himself. After a deep breath, Luthor said, were you talking to your counterpart on the... Description, Luthor paused. He said, description, messenger, now.
Ah!
Description, his voice sounded calm and empathetic. Luthor is pressed against the door from inside the armor room. Description, Luthor said, good. You're still there. Please don't run away. I won't come out. I'll stay inside the armor room. Description, he stopped himself. After a deep breath, Luthor said, were you talking to your counterpart on the pocket watch just now? Description, Scarlet sighed as she continued to press her back against the door from the outside. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm just mumbling to myself. Description, Luthor said, Scarlet, you hear a voice in your head, don't you? Description, Scarlet looks perplexed. She didn't reply to Luthor. Description, Luthor said, I heard you say, how do you know that? Description, Luthor is silent for a moment. Description, he said, was the voice in your head trying to tell you something about me? Description, Scarlet remained quietly pressed against the door. Description, Luthor said, if the voice in your head is telling you something about me, then I think you should trust in what was said. Description, Scarlet looks surprised. Why would you say that? What if the Why would you say that? What if the voice is telling me something bad about you? Description, Luthor said, I believe the person that the voice belongs to is trying to help us. Can you hear the voice? Description, Luthor said, I used to. Description, Luthor said, listen, Scarlet, I can tell you what's going on with the pocket watch. Description, Luthor said, I'll go away after I explain everything I know to you. Description, Luthor said, does that sound good to you, Scarlet? Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. Description, she squeezed her hands together, one hand squeezing around the pocket watch. I'm sorry, Luthor, I'm sorry I tried to kill you even when you spared my life and my brother's life. You must think I'm a horrible, disgusting person. And I accept that, Luthor. I am a killer and I will continue to kill anyone who wants to hurt my brother. But I am so very, very sorry for trying to kill you. Description, Luthor said, is that what's bothering you? I don't blame you at all for what happened. In fact, I'm sorry that I hurt you and your brother during the trials. Description, Luthor said, is that what's bothering you? I don't blame you at all for what happened. In fact, I'm sorry that I hurt you and your brother during the trials.
Ow.
Description, Scarlet stopped leaning against the door. She turned around and faced it. Description, an expression of surprise, followed by relief crossed her face. Are you saying, ellipsis, you don't hate me, Luthor? Description, Luthor said, I don't, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet's eyes got wet. She blinked back the tears and smiled, the tension in her body relaxing as she heard Luthor's words. What about your mother? Your mom was so nice to me when she was my teacher and I never meant to repay her kindness by trying to hurt you. Description, Luthor is silent for a moment. He said, my mom is a different story. She's still hanging on to her resentment for you. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard, tension returning to her body. Description, Luthor said, I reminded her that I was the one who chose to participate in those trials. I put my own life in danger, but I can't change my mom's mind. I'm sorry, Scarlet. But I truly think you did nothing wrong. Description,
Oof.
Scarlet took a deep breath. Thank you, Luthor. And, ellipsis, I understand why your mom feels the way she does. I deserve it. I really do. Description, Scarlet paused. I'll listen to what you have to say, Luthor, ellipsis, about the pocket watch. Description, Scarlet felt herself tearing up again. But can we talk through the door? At least for a bit, ellipsis. Description, Luthor said, of course. Also, I'm willing to listen to you, ellipsis. But I don't guarantee that I'll believe you, Luthor. You told me not to close the watch. But I already spoke to somebody who told me the exact opposite. I just wanted to let you know so you don't feel like you wasted your time on me afterwards. Description, Luthor said, did Petora pay you a visit?
Oh, okay. Okay, guys, I'll be right back because apparently food's ready. So I'll be back. All right, guys, I'm back.
Chapter 13.
So yeah, before I want to continue.
Description, Scout characters.
All right, guys, I'm back.
Description, he stopped himself. After a deep breath, Luthor said, were you talking to your counterpart on the pocket? Words, speaking rate, 60%. Word. Description, Scarlet sighed as she continued to press her back against the door from the outside. I'm not talking to anyone. I'm just mumbling to myself. Description,
Okay, where was
description,
I?
Luthor said, I heard you say. Description, he said, was the voice in your head trying. Description, Luthor said, if the voice in your head is telling you something about me, then I think you should trust in what was said. Why would you say that? What if description, Luthor said, I believe the person that the voice belongs to is trying to help us. Can you hear the voice? Description, Luthor said, I used to. Description, Luthor said, listen, Scarlet, I can tell you what's going on with the pocket watch. Description, Luthor said, I'll go away after I explain everything I know to you. Description, Luthor said, does that sound good to you, Scarlet? Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. Description, she squeezed her hands together, one hand squeezing around the pocket watch. I'm sorry, Luthor, I'm sorry I tried to kill you even when you You must think I'm a horrible, and I accept that, but I am so very- Description, Luthor said, is that what's bothering you? I don't blame you at all for what happened. In fact, I'm sorry that I hurt you and your brother during the trials. Description, Scarlet stopped leaning against the door. She turned around and faced it. Description, an expression of surprise, followed by relief crossed her face. Are you saying, ellipsis, you don't hate me, Luthor? Description, Luthor said, I don't, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet's eyes got wet. She blinked back the tears and smiled, the tension in her body relaxing as she heard Luthor's words. What about your mother? Your mom was so nice to me when she was my teacher and I never meant to repay her kindness by trying to hurt you. Description, Luthor is silent for a moment. He said, my mom is a different story. She's still hanging on to her resentment for you. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard, tension returning to her body. Description, Luthor said, I reminded her that I was the one who chose to participate in those trials. I put my own life in danger, but I can't change my mom's mind. I'm sorry, Scarlet. But Description, Scarlet took a deep breath. Thank you, Luthor. And, ellipsis, I understand why your mom feels the way she does. I deserve it. I really do.
Okay,
Description, Scarlet paused.
here you are.
I'll listen to what you have to say, Luthor, ellipsis, about the pocket watch. Description, Scarlet felt herself tearing up again. But can we talk through the door? At least for a bit, ellipsis. Description, Luthor said, of course. Also, I'm willing to listen to you, ellipsis. But I don't guarantee that I'll believe you, Luthor. You told me not to close the watch. But I already spoke to somebody who told me the exact opposite. I just wanted to let you know so you don't feel like you wasted your time on me afterwards. Description, Luthor said, did Petora pay you a visit? Description, Scarlet looks surprised. You know about Petora? Description, Luthor said, yeah. She tried to take the watch from me before. Description, Luthor said, since you have the watch now, I figured she might come to you too. Description, Luthor said, what did she say to you, Scarlet? She told me to stay away from you. And that this watch will lead to unhappiness for me. Description, Luthor paused. He said, I'm sorry, Scarlet. You're in this mess because of me, so I promise to get you out of it. Description, Scarlet paused. Description, Luthor paused. He said, I'm sorry. Description, Scarlet paused.
There we go.
This is getting complicated. Description, Scarlet paused. She felt the pocket watch in her hand. But I do want to hear what you have to say about the watch. Is the watch bad news, Luthor? Is it dangerous? Because I've been hearing this voice in my head, ellipsis, and I don't know what to believe anymore. Description, Luthor said, it's not a simple answer. Description, Scarlet gulped. Description, Luthor said, but I can tell you that the voice you've been hearing in your head is not here to hurt you, if the voice you have been hearing is who I think it is. System message, Scarlet is waiting. I don't know if hearing this from me is going to make you do the opposite, but I hope you can trust Luthor. 1 of 5 response. Can you tell Luthor that I miss him, Scarlet? Please, can you tell Luthor that it's about time he found the watch, Scarlet? 3 of 5. I told you Luthor wasn't angry at you. 4 of 5. Can you tell Luthor that I miss him, Scarlet? Can you tell Luthor that I miss him, Scarlet? Please tell Luthor that I was worried about him after all the things Alvin said to him. 2 of 5 responses. Button. I don't know if hearing this from me is going to make you do the opposite, but I hope you can trust Luthor. 1 of 5 responses. I don't know if hearing this from me is going to make you do the opposite, but I hope you can trust Luthor. Response. Description, Scarlet heard your message. Not now, please, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet pressed her hand on the lid of the watch. She started to close the watch. Description, Luthor said, Scarlet, can you keep the watch open and tell me what the voice in your head says? Description, Scarlet paused. She furrowed her brows. You want me to repeat back to you what the voice in my head says?
Yes.
Description, Luthor said, I know it seems like a weird request, but it's important to me to know if the voice in your head is saying something. Yeah, it's kind of a weird request. Petora said the voice in my head belongs to Chrono's Timecrest and that he's a bad man. Can you at least tell me why you're so interested in what the voice says? Description, Luthor said, the voice you have been hearing should belong to your counterpart, a human from the human world. Description, Scarlet gasped. Description, Luthor paused. He said, this human, your counterpart, was once my counterpart. Description, he said, I didn't come here today just to talk to you. Description, Luthor said, I want to speak with your counterpart, but I need your help to do that, Scarlet.
Okay.
Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. I thought the voice could belong to a person, but my brother told me it was impossible. Impossible. But Petora says the voice belongs to Chronos. And now you're saying it belongs to someone else. Description, Luthor didn't say anything for a moment. Description, Luthor said, sadly, Chronos is also on the other side of the watch, along with your counterpart. Description, Luthor said, but if I'm right, then the voice you've been hearing should be your counterpart's and not Chronos. Your counterpart is not here to hurt you. Description, Luthor said, in fact, I'm alive thanks to your counterpart. Description, Scarlet gulped. I'm so very confused. Description, she closed the watch. System message, connection 58 minutes for skip timer for 1 skip crystal. You have 3 skip crystals remaining. Skip timer for 1 skip crystal.
Well.
Description, Luthor is standing near the window closest to the door in the armor room, holding the pocket watch in his hand and looking out the window. Description, Scarlet is quietly sitting on her stool by the table, with a troubled expression on her face. She has description, Scarlet is quietly sitting on her stool by the table, with a troubled expression on her face. She has a stack of name tags in her hand with writing carved into them. Description, the name tag on the top of the stack Scarlet held in her hands has the words, different timelines. Past, original past, future, now.
I don't know what that means.
Description, more name tags with notes carved on them are stacked on the table. Description, Scarlet already changed back to her work uniform of gray overalls and shirt. Description, the room is silent. Luthor, description, the room is silent. Luthor looked over at Scarlet and said, how are you doing, Scarlet? Description, Scarlet snapped out of her daze. Ellipsis. Yeah, ellipsis, sorry. I've just been sitting here quietly, haven't I? Sorry, ellipsis. Description, Luthor said, it's okay. Everything I told you, if you believe me, must be very shocking to say the very least. Description, Scarlet shook her head and inhaled deeply. Shocking and just so, ellipsis, I don't know, ellipsis, a human from the human world changed the past in our world and made me a Timecrest? I'm now linked to Chronos Timecrest, whose real name is Alvin. And Alvin is the first human that ever came to Elysia. I don't even, ellipsis, I'm sorry. I feel very slow right now, ellipsis. I hope you don't have to go soon, Luthor. Description, Luthor said, take your time. I'll keep an eye out for Voldorian guards and your brother in the meantime. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. Thank you, ellipsis. Description, the door and windows of the armor room are all shut right now. Luthor looked away from Scarlet and out of the window by the door again. Description, Scarlet went back to looking dazed. The room fell silent for a while. Why was I chosen to be a Timecrest? Description, Luthor didn't reply immediately. After a moment, he said, I don't know. Your counterpart didn't know that choosing you would change you into a Timecrest. And... Description, Luthor said, and Alvin doesn't seem to know why you were chosen either. Description, Scarlet furrowed her brows. What's going on then? Why me? I don't even have any human blood in me and we barely know each other, Luthor. Description, Luthor sighed. He said, I don't believe in fate, but at this point, maybe fate is what it comes down to. Description, Scarlet paused. She took a deep breath. Are you okay, Luthor? You haven't told me much about how you've been since you woke up in this timeline. Description, Luthor looked out the window. He ran his thumb over the surface of the pocket watch. Description, Luthor said, I don't remember the last 6 years, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet looks surprised. What do you mean? Description, Luthor said, I was 13 when I spoke to Alvin. Now I'm 19 in this timeline and I remember nothing that happened in between.
Wait. Hold on. So Luthor was 29. This is... If I'm correct, if Luthor was 29 or 26, whatever, when he was talking to Riley, and now he's 9... This is weird.
Description, Scarlet gasped. No, ellipsis. Description, one of Scarlet's hands rubbed the other. That's crazy. You don't remember anything from the last 6 years? What could have caused your memory loss? Description, Luthor shook his head and said, I don't know. Either Alvin did something to my memories or maybe it's a side effect of what happened. Description, Scarlet let everything sink in for a moment. What did your mom say when you told her all of this? Description, Luthor said, I didn't tell her. You're the first person I told about what's truly going on with me. Really? But wouldn't your mom notice? Ellipsis, something was off? Description, Luthor said, my mom's memory of the last 6 years with me seems intact, so it's been a challenge pretending everything is normal to my parents. Description, Luthor said, especially when they make references to something I don't remember from the last 6 years. Description, Luthor said, but it's either that or the truth. And the truth will only lead to endless questions from them which I'm not ready to deal with yet. Description, Luthor paused. He said, it's funny, but my parents actually want to change their last name back to Reed.
That is weird.
Description, Scarlet looks surprised. Do you think it has something to do with what Alvin did to you? Description, Luthor shook his head. He said, no, I think it's just a coincidence. She wanted to support me, but my mom was never fond of the pocket watch or my obsession with Chronos Timecrest. Description, Luthor said, I think she just prefers to be a Reed again. I just think it's very ironic timing is all. Description, Scarlet let everything sink in again. Luthor, ellipsis, even though you look 19, you are actually your 13-year-old self?
Wait.
Luthor, ellipsis, even though you look 19, you are actually your 13-year-old self? Description, Luthor said, yeah. Description, Scarlet cringed. So, ellipsis, the Voldorian trials we fought in were pretty recent for you, ellipsis, right? Description, Luthor looked at Scarlet. She had worry all over her face. Description, Luthor said, yeah, it hasn't been that long since the trials for me, but I hope you can believe me when I say I don't blame you for anything that happened during our fight. Description, Scarlet sat quietly for a moment before nodding with a small smile. Thank you, Luthor. Hearing you say that makes me feel so much lighter. Description, Scarlet paused again, her smile fading. You told me that Alvin said a new past was created where I'm a Timecrest. But if you're older then doesn't it mean this is your future and not your past? Description, Luthor said, Alvin and my counterpart. Description, Luthor shook his head and cleared his throat. Description, Luthor said, and your counterparts are from the future.
This is... Even though I think I played this once, it's still confusing.
Description, Scarlet inhaled deeply as Luthor said your counterpart. Description, Luthor said, to Alvin and your counterpart, the timeline we are living now is the past, even though it's my future and your present. Description, Scarlet touched the top name tag that has the words, different timelines, past, original past, future, now, carved into it. Right, ellipsis, you told me that. Sorry, it's taking me some time to absorb everything. Description, Scarlet's expression is mixed with awe and fear. Time traveling is real. Wow, ellipsis. My counterpart is actually from the future, ellipsis, wow. Time traveling is just so, ellipsis, wow. And it's messy, ellipsis, so it seems. Can you list out all the timelines again, Luthor? Description, Luthor said, of course. Oh, sorry. Hang on. I need to write down more details this time. Description, Scarlet placed the stack of name tags that she had been holding on the table before picking up fresh empty ones. Incendiatos Magnus, precision point. Description, Scarlet's finger began to glow. Okay, go ahead. Description, Luthor nodded. He said, from my understanding, there are 4 major timelines. Description, Luthor said, first, there's the future timeline where Alvin and your counterpart are from. Description, Scarlet carved, future equals Alvin and counterpart, into the name tag. Description, Luthor said, second, there's the timeline when I'm 13 years old, where I'm from. Description, Scarlet continued to take notes. Description, he said, third, there's the timeline of the original past that has now been erased and replaced by this timeline. Description, Luthor said, and fourth, there's this timeline that we're currently living in. Description, Scarlet finished carving her notes into the name tags. Oh, wow, Luthor, you seem to understand all this complicated stuff. Description, Luthor said, it's all I think about. Description, Luthor said, Alvin's words are on repeat in my mind and it's very annoying to keep thinking about someone I hate so often. Do you know what happened in the original past, ellipsis, the timeline that got erased and replaced with this one? Description, Luthor said, Alvin did have memories of the original past since he's from the future, but he claimed his memories of the original past were getting erased as this new past is forming. Description, Luthor said, the only things he let on about the original past was that I was a Timecrest and that I became the master of wind and earth. Description, Scarlet gasped. You became the master of 2 elements? I've never heard of someone holding the title of master for 2 elements. That's amazing, Luthor. Description, Luthor looked at the walls of the quarantine zone outside the window. He said, and Alvin said there were no quarantine zones in the original past. Description, Scarlet's mouth dropped a little. No quarantine zones? Praise the first, that sounds so good. Description, Luthor said, that timeline is gone now. Who knows what's going to happen going forward? Oh, right, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet reached for an empty name tag and carved Luthor as master of 2 elements and no quarantine zones in original past. Description, Luthor shrugged. He sighed and said, and who knows if Alvin is even telling the truth about the original past? Description, Luthor muttered under his breath, who knows? Description, she turned around to add the new notes she had taken onto the stack on the table. When she did, the stack tumbled over into a pile. Description, Scarlet pursed her lips, her expression troubled, as she put her hands on top of the messy pile of notes. Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch in his hand. Read it. Description, after a moment, Luthor said, I opened the pocket watch, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet looks alarmed as she turned her attention back to Luthor. You opened the pocket watch? But you said the watch can even sense surroundings, so aren't you afraid that Alvin's watching and listening in on us? Description, Luthor said, who knows? He could be. He probably is. Description, Luthor said, but this pocket watch is also the only way to communicate to your counterpart, so it's worth the risk to me. Description, Luthor paused. He said, I'm just... Description, Luthor paused. He said, Scarlet, I would like your help in letting me know if your counterpart says anything, but I understand if you don't want to. I'm just, ellipsis, a little, ellipsis. I feel nervous with the watch open. Description, Luthor nodded. He said, I know. I shouldn't have opened the pocket watch, but I was hoping the 3 of us can talk together. Description, Luthor said, but let me leave the room. Just give me a few minutes to talk to your counterpart outside and I'll close the watch. Description, Luthor opened the door to the armor room. Description, Scarlet furrowed her brows. After a moment, she took a deep breath. Wait, you don't have to leave. Please stay. Description, Scarlet blushed at her own words. I mean, ellipsis, I would like it if you stayed and included me in the conversation you had with your, ellipsis, my counterpart, Luthor. It's been strange for me ever since the watch appeared. And I'm glad to finally have someone who knows what I'm going through, so, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet's voice trailed off. Description, Luthor smiled. He said, that's how I felt when I first started talking to your counterpart.
Excuse me.
Description, Luthor said, you're not alone anymore, Scarlet. I'm in this description, Luthor said, you're not alone anymore, Scarlet. I'm in this with you and you'll always be included if you want to be. Description, the troubled expression faded from Scarlet's face. She smiled, looking hopeful. System message, Scarlet, I'm in with you and Luthor on this too, Scarlet. 1 of 5 response. I'm sorry I got you involved in all of this. I didn't mean to turn you into a Timecrest, but I'm glad we met. 2 of 5. Scarlet, can you please tell Luthor that I'm glad to see he's okay? 3 of... So Luthor doesn't remember the last 6 years. 4 of 5. Hey, Scarlet, now that you know everything, I'm hoping you will keep the watch open more often. I like to be included in things too. 5. System mess. I'm in with you and Luthor on this too, Scarlet. 1 of 5 response. I'm in with you and Luthor on this too, Scarlet. 1 of 5 responses. Button. I'm in with you and Luthor on this too. Responded. Description, Scarlet heard your message. She took up. Description, Scarlet heard your message. She took a deep breath. Luthor, my counterpart said something just now. Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch. He said, Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch. He said, what did your counterpart say, Scarlet? My counterpart said I'm in this with you and Luthor. Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch in his hand and smiled. Description, he said, it's good to know you're still here with us. Description, he smiled and looked at Scarlet. He said, Description, he
Whoops.
smiled and looked at Scarlet. He said, you're definitely not alone in this, Scarlet. Both of us are here with you. Description, Scarlet smiled a little and nodded. Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch. Description, he said, how have you been? Are you okay? System message, I'm good. I've been having a lot of fun learning more about Scarlet. 1 of 6 respond, I'm good, but I miss you, Luthor. 2 of 6, I'm sad that I can't help you if you're in danger, Luthor. It's been rough for me. Scarlet has been ignoring me and it's been hard getting to know her. Not to mention she keeps the pocket watch closed a lot of the time. 4 of 6 I'll avoid the details, but it's been rough for me. 5 of 6, I've been curious. Sometimes, weeks could pass in your world, but only 24 hours pass for me. Why do you think that is, Luthor? 6 of 6, I'm good. I've been having a lot of fun learning more about Scarlet. I've been curious. Sometimes, weeks could pass. Descript, I've been curious. I've been curious. Sometimes, weeks could pass in your world, but your counterpart, my counterpart has been curious, ellipsis. Do you know why sometimes weeks pass by in our world when only 24 hours pass by in my counterpart's world, Luthor? Description, Luthor said, oh really? So it seems like time could pass by differently in the human world than it does in Alicia. What is my counterpart talking about, Luthor? Description, Luthor said, I assume when time is passing in our world as we talk to your counterpart, time is also passing by in your counterpart's world. Description, Luthor said, the same goes for when the pocket watch is closed. But it seems like sometimes the time that passes by in both our worlds is not the equal. Description, Scarlet nodded slowly. Description, Luthor gave the pocket watch a squeeze. Description, Luthor looks excited. He said, this is certainly very interesting. Do you know why it happens? Description, Luthor shook his head. He said, I don't. Description, he said, maybe I'll. Description, Luthor stopped himself. Description, after a moment Luthor said, it doesn't matter what Alvin knows. Description, Luthor said, we are never going to talk again. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. Her expression is apprehensive. Description, Scarlet took a deep breath. So in order for you to become a Timecrest again, Luthor, you have to beg this Alvin to go back to your timeline. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. If you beg to go back to your timeline, then your parents will die and you will destroy Walter. Description, Luthor said, yes. But if you don't go back to your timeline, then I'll stay a Timecrest. Description, Luthor looked down at his own reflection in the watch. He said, yes. I don't understand. Doesn't Alvin want you to join him? If he wants you to join him, then why is he stacking so many terrible obstacles in your way? Description, Luthor dug a nail into his palm. He said, that's what I asked him to. Description, Luthor shook his head and said, but Alvin says he knows me. He says he's certain that I'll choose to become a Timecrest again even knowing it will kill my parents and all the Voldorians.
Jeez.
Description, Scarlet's head is shaking. She muttered. That's crazy. Description, Luthor slammed his hand against the wall. Scarlet jumped a little in her seat. Description, Luthor said, Alvin doesn't know me at all. He doesn't know me.
We know in the first time when you go with Riley,
Description,
Yeah.
Scarlet hugged herself with her arms and shivered. Description, Luthor looked over at Scarlet and said, I can tell. Description, at the same time, Scarlet said, you can't. Description, both Luthor and Scarlet stopped talking. After a moment, Luthor said, you first, Scarlet. Oh, ellipsis, thanks. I was just going to say that you can't go back to your timeline, Luthor. Description, Luthor's eyes widened. He said, and I was going to say that I can tell you don't want to be a Timecrest, Scarlet. Description, he said, so if I don't go back to my timeline, you will probably stay Timecrest for the rest of your life and be connected to Alvin. I know and I don't want to be connected to Alvin. You're right, I don't want to be a Timecrest. And I don't know if Alvin's threats against you will come true or if he's just bluffing. But if there's even a chance that you'll kill all the Voldorians if you return to your timeline, then don't do it, Luthor. Please don't beg Alvin if there's a chance it could lead you to killing people. Description, Luthor turned towards Scarlet. Description, he said, why? If I return to my timeline, then you would be free from all of this. Description, Scarlet paused. Because you're not a killer, Luthor. And I don't want to. Description, Scarlet sighed. I don't want to be the one that turns you into a killer just because I don't want to be a Timecrest. Description, Luthor dug a nail into the palm of his free hand. So please tell me you're not thinking about returning to your timeline and taking your chances with Alvin.
Oof.
Description, Luthor looked out the window again. He said, I'm not. Description, Luthor looks apologetic as he said, I already made up my mind that I have to stay in this timeline. Description, Scarlet sighed in relief.
Wait, where's Ash?
Description, Luthor said, I don't think there's a chance I'll kill the Voldorians even if I return to my timeline, but returning would mean killing my parents. Description, Luthor said, so I'm not going back. I have to stay and live out my life in this timeline, at least for now. Good. I think that's a really good idea, Luthor. Description, Luthor paused. He said, thank you, Scarlet. Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch. Description, he said, and I apologize to both of you. My decision affects all of us, but I didn't speak to either of you before making up my mind to stay in this timeline. Description, Scarlet nodded. I appreciate the apology, Luthor, but there's no need. Given what you could lose by returning to your timeline, it's very reasonable for you to just decide to stay here. I'm just sad that you lost 6 years of your life because of Alvin. Description, Luthor said, yeah, but now I know who he is and I'm not going to lose any more to him. System message, Scarlet, can you tell Luthor that I support his decision? Don't worry about me and just do what he thinks is right because he has so much at stake here. 1 of 3 respond. Yeah, I would have liked it if Luthor talked to me first before deciding to say nothing. Can you tell Luthor that I support his decision? Don't worry about me and just do what he thinks. Can you tell Luthor that I support his decision? Responded, can you tell Luthor? Description, Scarlet smiled. Luthor, my counterpart supports your decision and said you should do what you think is right. Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch. He gave it a squeeze and said, thank you. Description, Scarlet continued to hug herself. Luthor, I know you believe that the voice that I've been hearing is my counterpart's. And I know you told me that Alvin said he'll leave us alone in this timeline, ellipsis, but he could be lying. It makes me nervous that both my counterpart and Alvin share use of the watch. Description, Scarlet shivered. What if the voice I've been hearing, that we're talking to right now, is Alvin's? I'm not sure I'd be able to tell the difference. I don't know either of them after all. I'm afraid I might be leading us astray by telling you what the voice has been saying. Description, Luthor looked over at Scarlet and said, this is an awkward question, but did you die? Description, he said, it seemed like I had to die before Alvin could talk to me freely. That's why he wanted me to jump off the Sovereign Eye. Description, Scarlet bit her lip and gulped. I think, ellipsis, I did die recently. Description, Luthor arched his brow. He said, you're not sure if you did? Ellipsis, well, ellipsis, I overextended myself recently. When that happens, the aura in my body freezes and I have a 50/50 chance of surviving. I felt like I was dying, but when I woke up, my brother claims that his prayers to the first mage kept me alive. And that I didn't die. But, ellipsis, I think I died. And my counterpart brought me back to life. My counterpart told me that's what happened. Description, Luthor said, Scarlet, did you feel any pain when you died? Description, Scarlet trembled as she swallowed hard. Yeah, ellipsis, I did. I was consumed with pain. But as my body froze, I eventually went completely numb towards the end. Why do you ask, Luthor? Description, Luthor paused. He said, Alvin said he took away the pain I would have felt from dying. I was just wondering if he did the same for you. Wow, ellipsis. Alvin took away your pain? Description, Luthor said, yeah, I don't know why. Description, Scarlet bit down on her bottom lip. I don't think he took away my pain. Description, Luthor said, I see. I'm sorry you had to experience that. Yeah, but I'm happy to be alive. But since I died, it means I'm fully connected to Alvin now. So what if the voice in my head that I've been hearing is not just my counterpart? What if Alvin has already spoken to me?
Wait! That's why Ash is getting those red text messages, because Ash died and... Oh no.
Description, Luthor said, have you heard a second voice in your head? I only heard one voice so far. But, description, Luthor said, that's good. When I spoke with Alvin, I recognized 2 distinct voices in my head. Okay, that's good. Anything else that distinguishes my counterpart from Alvin? Description, Luthor said, do you feel warm when you receive a message from your counterpart? I felt warm when I received a message from your counterpart, but not from Alvin. Description, Scarlet gulped. Her hands began to fidget and pick at her work overalls. You felt warm? Like, how warm? Description, Luthor said, it's hard to describe, but I felt a sense of warmth in my chest and... Description, Luthor said, and it almost felt like someone was actually with me, just invisible, but with me. I felt someone like a Description, Luthor said, and it almost felt like someone was actually with me, just invisible, but with me. I felt like I wasn't alone when I spoke with your counterpart. Someone like a stranger? Description, Luthor shook his head. He said, no, not a stranger. Okay, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet looks worried. Okay, well, I don't think we feel the same things when receiving messages from my counterpart. Do you think it's bad that I don't feel warm when I hear my counterpart's messages? Description, Luthor said, I'm not sure if it's bad. It's just different from me. Description, Luthor said, and maybe you'll start feeling the same things if you give it more time. Description, Scarlet nodded, still looking worried. Is there anything else to tell my counterpart apart from Alvin? Description, Luthor said, if only I could still see the watch glow, I could tell you if Alvin was there. The watch glows? Description, Luthor said, the watch glows blue for your counterpart and red for Alvin. Only Timecrest can see the glow. Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch, his expression sad. I only see a regular watch face now. I see a blue glow. Description, Luthor said, you do? Normally, I can perceive light, but when ellipsis, my counterpart speaks, I can perceive a soft blue glow in front of my eyes. Description, Scarlet spoke quickly, motioning her hand in circles in front of her eyes. She smiled. At least what I remember blue to be when I still had my sight. Does this happen to you, Luthor? Description, Luthor smiled and said, oh, interesting. I only see the blue glow coming from the watch. Description, Scarlet chuckled. I'm glad to finally know why I'm seeing blue. I should have suspected it had something to do with my counterpart. And I'm glad to report that I haven't seen any red. Description, Luthor said, that's good. I should, wallet, now, I should write this down. Blue is for my counterpart. Red is for Alvin. Description, Scarlet reached for where she put the empty name tags on the table, but there are none left. She gulped. Oh, no more name tags left. I'll just have to remember that blue is for my counterpart and red is for Alvin. Description, Luthor said, Alvin claims he won't bother you, your counterpart or me if I stay in this timeline. Do you really think Alvin will keep his word and leave us alone? Description, Luthor paused for a long moment. Description, Luthor said, yeah, I do. That's why I thought the voice in your head probably belonged to your counterpart. Description, Luthor said, of course, I don't know for sure that Alvin will keep his promise, but I believe he will. Description, Luthor looked angry for a moment before he said, he wants me to beg for him on my own. He'll ruin Description, Luthor looked angry for a moment before he said, he wants me to beg for him on my own. He'll ruin his own point if he interferes. Description, Luthor dug a nail into one hand. He said, Alvin's pride is the best guarantee we have for now. Description, Scarlet took a deep breath. I hope you're right, Luthor. And at least I know now that the blue glow is a good sign. Description, Scarlet cupped her cheeks with both hands. Oh, I didn't say thank you. My counterpart revived me and I didn't know what was happening at the time. And I thought my counterpart was just a voice in my head. But it's all starting to sink in now. If it hadn't been for my counterpart, I would probably be dead right now. Description, Luthor smiled and said, would you like to hold the watch, Scarlet? For a moment. Description, Luthor walked over and placed the watch in Scarlet's hand. Description, she held it carefully. Thank you so much for saving me. Description, Scarlet smiled and handed the pocket watch back to Luthor. System message, Scarlet is waiting. You're welcome, Scarlet. It was definitely my pleasure to be able to help. 1 of 5 Hey, Scarlet, I just want you to know that I've only said things to you so far. I can tell when Alvin's talking and if he ever tries to talk to you, I'll let you know. 2 of 5. After I revived Scarlet, the pocket watch glowed red briefly. 3 of 5 responses. After I revived Scarlet, the pocket watch glowed red briefly. 3 of 5 responses. Button.
I don't know if I...
Button.
Okay, hang on, let me...
New load settings.
Alright, I'm gonna
Button.
save this real quick.
Save/transfer. Save/close. Save/transfer. Close. Save game. The tech load. Save game.
Okay, there we go.
Save game. Save. Alerts. Okay, but okay. If music follow. New game. Continue. Continue. So you don't feel vertical. One. Say not vertical. So you don't feel warm when receiving messages from me, Scarlet? I'm disappointed to hear that. 4 of 5. After I revived Scarlet, the pocket watch glowed red briefly. After I revived Scarlet, the pocket watch glowed red briefly. Description, Scarlet gasped. Luthor, my counterpart said that after reviving me, the pocket watch glowed red. Description, Luthor said, did you see the red glow too, Scarlet? Description, Scarlet furrowed her brows. I don't know if I did. Maybe. I was Description, Luthor dug a nail into his palm. He said, did Alvin say anything? I don't think so. System message, I can confirm he didn't say anything. 1 of 1 responses. I can confirm. Monica responded. I can confirm. Description. Scarlet looks relieved. My counterpart confirms that Alvin didn't say anything. Description. Luthor fell silent. Scarlet looks tense. Description. After some silence, Luthor said, I bet he wanted to say something there, but it's good he seems to be keeping his word. What do you think he wanted to say? Description. Luthor said, maybe he just wanted your counterpart to know that he took notice. Well, that's unsettling. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. My, counterpart, ellipsis, must be pretty powerful to turn me into a Timecrest. You said that. Description,
Whoops.
My, counterpart, ellipsis, must be pretty powerful to turn me into a Timecrest. You said that even Alvin was impressed. Description, Luthor said, yeah, Alvin made it clear that your counterpart is an exception. But I guess even your counterpart, ellipsis, I mean my counterpart can't undo what has been done and turn you back into the Timecrest. Otherwise, you would be a Timecrest right now instead of me. Description, Luthor's expression and tone was angry for a moment. Description, he took a deep breath and said more calmly, yeah, Alvin certainly acted like he was the only one that can undo this. Description, Luthor said, besides. Description, Luthor said, even if your counterpart could undo what has happened, I'm not sure what the side effects will be. Description, Scarlet gulped. You mean, ellipsis, your parents could still die? Description, Luthor dug a nail into his palm. He said, maybe. I figured Alvin intended to send me to the original past before your counterpart forced Alvin to take a detour which landed me in this timeline. Description, Luthor said, but I don't think it mattered to Alvin that I ended up in this timeline instead. Description, Luthor said, in fact, he seemed intrigued rather than disappointed in what your counterpart did. Description,
Interesting.
Scarlet cringed. You told me that you waited your whole life to talk to Alvin. I'm sorry he turned out to be such a horrible person. Description, Luthor said, yeah. System message, Scarlet is waiting. We'll get through this together. 1 of 5 response. I was there when Luthor spoke with Alvin. Alvin is a horrible person. 2 of 5. I'm actually looking forward to talking to Alvin again. 3 of 5. Alvin's not the only one that can turn Luthor back into a Timecrest. I have ways to, like playing again and making a different choice for example, but I want to stay in this timeline and see what happens. 4 of 5. I was there when Luthor spoke with Alvin. Alvin is a horrible person. We'll get through this together. 1 of 5 responses. We'll get through this together. 1 of 5 response. Description, Scarlet smiled. My counterpart said that we'll get through this together. Description, Luthor smiled too. He said, yes, together. Description, Luthor said, that's why I'm here today. Description, Luthor said, Description,
Whoops.
Luthor said, I actually knew you were working in the quarantine zone for a while now and I didn't come to see you right away, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet looks worried. Maybe you did feel a little resentment toward me. Description, Luthor said, that's not it at all. I didn't come to you because I didn't want to see the watch again. Description, Luthor said, when I woke up in this timeline in my 19-year-old body, I realized. Description, Luthor dug a nail into his palm. He said, I realized that Alvin just sees my life as something he can play with. Description, Luthor said, I wanted to distance myself from everything that is linked with Alvin, including you and your counterpart. I never wanted to be around the watch again. Why did you come back then, Luthor? You're not a Timecrest anymore. You're free from him. As long as you don't beg to join Alvin, then Alvin is supposed to leave all of us alone, ellipsis. Description, Luthor said, I'm back here because I realized if I run from Alvin now, he'll eventually end up winning. Description, Luthor said, even if Alvin keeps his word and leaves us alone, he's not going to give up on his plans. Description, Luthor said, Alvin can live forever. What if the next Timecrest after you decides to help Alvin with his plan of extracting First Mage Ezra from our world? Description, Scarlet gulped. Description, Luthor said, according to Alvin, First Mage Ezra is the life source of our world. Without him, Alencia would end. But why would Alvin just tell you that? If he wanted your help, isn't it just better to keep quiet that our world depends on the First Mage? Description, Luthor said, Alvin certainly seems to be working against himself. Description, he said, but I think Alvin told me about the importance of the First Mage for the same reason he told me that my parents would die and I would destroy Boulder if I joined him. Description, Luthor said, at the bottom of it all, Alvin seems to think that what he has to offer me is greater than all these losses. Description, Luthor said, he thinks I'll still help him despite everything that will be lost. Alvin has something to give you that's more valuable than the lives of everyone in this world? Description, Luthor said, it sounds absurd doesn't it? I would have to be a completely different person to join Alvin. Did it even say what he's offering you, Luthor? Description, Luthor dug a nail into his palm. He said, Alvin's last words to me were, you're trapped and only I can set you free. Description, Luthor looked out the window at the walls of the quarantine zone. He said, I believe Alvin is offering me freedom in exchange for pretty much some of the worst things I could think of happening. Description, Scarlet touched her lips. She repeated, you're trapped and only I can set you free. Does he mean freedom from the quarantine zone? Description, Luthor said, who knows? All I know is I want to stop him because I fear he will actually destroy our world. But, ellipsis. But you said First Mage Ezra is still alive, right? He was the one who banished Alvin from our world, right? There's no way the First Mage would just let Alvin destroy our world if he's still alive, ellipsis. Right? Description, Luthor said, what worries me is that no one has seen First Mage Ezra for a long time so we don't know his current state of mind. Description, Luthor said, Alvin and the First Mage were friends. And a lot of time has passed since the First Mage banished Alvin. What if he is starting to forgive Alvin? Description, Scarlet gulped and furrowed her brows. You think First Mage Ezra might let Alvin back into our world? Description, Luthor said, all we know right now is that Alvin is alive and still has a hold over our world. Description, Luthor said, so either First Mage Ezra wasn't strong enough to get rid of Alvin completely, or worse, he never wanted to. Description, Scarlet shook her head and clutched her stomach with one hand. I don't know what to be shocked about anymore, when everything is so shocking. The First Mage is still alive out there, ellipsis. And he was friends with the first human, ellipsis. And the first human wants to take the first mage from our world, which will cause our world to end. And the fact that we're caught in the middle of this, ellipsis. Description, Scarlet continued to clutch her stomach. If the first mage is alive, why do you think he's been hiding from everyone, Luthor? I'm grateful to him for the fire magic I'm using today. I'm sure lots of mages feel the same way. If he showed himself, I'm sure there would be tons of celebrations all around. Description, Luthor said, if Alvin is telling the truth, and first mage Ezra is still out there, maybe he's hiding because he doesn't care about Alencia anymore. Description, Scarlet shook her head. Description, Luthor said, and if he doesn't care to save Alencia from Alvin anymore, who will protect Ash? Ash? Description, Luthor paused. He smiled and said, Ash is my sibling. Description, Scarlet nodded, seeming to remember something. Oh, right. Ash was just a baby during the Valdorian mage trials. Description, Luthor's expression softened. He smiled and said, yeah, Ash is 6 years old now. Description, Scarlet.
Wait, whoa. No. Oh, wait. Maybe that is right.
Smiled. After a moment her smile faded. I have a sibling I want to take care of too. Description, Luthor said, right, so I want to get rid of Alvin somehow before he achieves what he wants to. Shouldn't you close the pocket watch? Description, Luthor said, to shut out Alvin means shutting out your counterpart and I don't think that's the right thing to do. Description, Luthor said, I got a sense that your counterpart is one person Alvin can't control. Description, Luthor said, your counterpart took me to this timeline. It may not have derailed Alvin's plans, but it was something Alvin didn't expect to happen and that's a very good thing for us. What if my counterpart doesn't want to help us against Alvin?
Excuse me.
Description, Luthor said, I'm hoping your counterpart will... Description, Luthor said, your counterpart is still here after all, talking to us. Description, Luthor said, I'm here today because I want to ask for both you and your counterpart's help against Alvin. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. She covered her mouth with her hands and breathed into her hands. Description, the room fell silent. Description, Luthor said, I debated for a long time whether or not to come here and tell you the truth, Scarlet. Description, Luthor said, if I had stayed away, what would you have done with the watch? Description, Scarlet cleared her throat. I might have taken it out to talk to the voice in my head from time to time, but probably not very often. Most likely I would store the watch away. Maybe even be able to forget that I had it unless it teleports to me. Description, Luthor said, I thought about letting the next Timecrest deal with this, Scarlet. Description, Luthor said, I didn't want to complicate your life. Description, Luthor said, but what if the... Description, Luthor said, but what if the next Timecrest doesn't want to fight Alvin? Description, Luthor said, what if the next counterpart doesn't have any surprising powers? Description, Luthor said, rather than take a chance on the next Timecrest and counterpart, I want to do something about Alvin myself. The world. Description, Luthor
Here we
said,
go.
rather than take a chance on the next Timecrest and counterpart, I want to do something about Alvin myself. The world. Description, Luthor said, and the people we care about are in danger as long as he is around. Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. How do we even fight someone like Alvin? Will he even be affected by our magic? Description, Luthor said, Alvin was affected by your counterpart's magic. He forgot his memories of the original past. Description, Luthor said, if your counterpart's powers continue to grow, then maybe your counterpart will be able to affect Alvin more. Description, Luthor said, and then there's First Mage Ezra. He was the one who managed to banish Alvin from Alencia. Description, Luthor said, maybe he'll know how to grow your counterpart's powers. Or maybe he already knows how to get rid of Alvin and just needs some more convincing. Description, Luthor said, it's clear to me that I need to find First Mage Ezra somehow. Description, Luthor said, the Masters of Alencia may know where he is or know something about Alvin too. Description, Luthor said, but I can't start searching for the First Mage or get an audience with the Masters Council if I'm stuck in here. So, first, I need to find a way to escape from the quarantine zone. Description, Scarlet licked her bottom lip. She nodded her head,
How?
an expression of apprehension on her face. Description, Scarlet took a deep breath. So, you're really serious about going against Alvin, Luthor? Luthor, maybe this is what Petora meant when she said this watch will lead me to unhappiness. Maybe if we both forget about the watch, everything will be okay. Description, Luthor said, Alvin won't stop unless someone stops him. I don't want to leave that up to someone else. I won't let him take First Mage Ezra away from our world. Description, Luthor said, I won't let him do whatever he likes with my life. Description, Scarlet nodded, looking fearful. Description, Luthor looked down at the pocket watch. Description, Luthor said, does your counterpart have anything to say? Yeah, ellipsis, sure. I'll let you know if my counterpart says anything. System message, Scarlet, I don't like the idea of leaving things to the next counterpart either. 1 of 5 responses. Button. Who knows how my powers will grow, Luthor? Who even knows what exactly happened between Ezra and Alvin? I'd like to wait and see what happens before picking any side. 2 of 5 responses. But I agree with Scarlet. Luthor, maybe it's best if you just let it go and live out your life in this timeline. Maybe it's best if we go our separate ways. 3 of 5 So, both you and Luthor end up working with Alvin in the future. 4 of 5 responses. Button. I don't like system mess. I don't like the idea of leaving things to the next counterpart either. 1 of 5 responses. Button. I don't like the idea of leaving things to the next counterpart either. 1 of 5 response. My counterpart doesn't want to leave things to the next counterpart either. Description. Luthor nodded. He said, let's go down this path together. Description. Scarlet took a deep breath and rubbed her legs. Luthor, you mind if I clean some armor? It helps me calm down. Description. Luthor said, yeah, sure, I don't mind. I'll just continue to keep a lookout for guards and your brother. Description. Luthor looked out the window as Scarlet rounded up all the notes on the table with her hands. She sighed as she felt the large number of notes underneath her hands. Thanks, Luthor. Thanks, Luthor. Description. Luthor said, thanks for hearing me out, Scarlet. Description. Scarlet pushed the notes to one side before walking over to the row of stained armor. Description. She brought back a piece of stained armor to the table and started cleaning, using her refined process. Description. After she finished rubbing liquid over the armor, Scarlet took out a towel from the pocket of her overalls and started scrubbing the armor. Description. She scrubbed and scrubbed with the towel, before she gasped, looking horrified. What am I doing? Description. Luthor looked over at Scarlet. I'm scrubbing the armor with a towel instead of the scouring pad. And I didn't even start the timer. Description. Scarlet shook her head and dropped the towel on the table. I don't know how I can help you, Luthor. Description. Luthor said, why do you say that, Scarlet? Description. Scarlet sat back down on her stool by the table. She clasped her hands together on her lap. You are Luthor Timecrest, the prodigy. Everyone in this quarantine zone knows your name. And my counterpart. I didn't even know humans could cast magic, and yet my counterpart revived me from the dead. Not to mention, my counterpart changed me into a Timecrest and altered the past just like that. Then there's First Mage Ezra, who gave our world magic. And Alvin, the first human, who can just send you to different timelines. Luthor. Who am I compared to everyone I just listed? I'm a girl from a small town that no one has heard of, who hasn't done anything noteworthy in my life. I can't even go on the same quests as my brother because I can't get myself promoted in my guild. Description. Scarlet's hands are shaking. Thanks for telling me everything, Luthor, but I don't think I can help you. I won't be able to protect anyone like usual. Description. Scarlet wiped her hands on her overalls before she wiped her face with her hands. Description. Luthor said, you already helped me today, by helping me speak with your counterpart. Description. Luthor said, and I'm stuck inside the quarantine zone for the time being. It would be extremely helpful to have someone like you, who knows the truth, that can go outside and gather information. Description. Luthor paused. He said, no, forget even that. It's just nice to have someone who knows the truth that I can talk to and bounce ideas off of, especially now when I can't hear your counterpart anymore. Description. Scarlet lowered her head. I'm not brave enough, Luthor. At least not as much as you are. Knowing what you know, you still came back for the watch. You still want to fight against Alvin. You know what my first thought was after you told me everything? I wanted to close the pocket watch and run away. I'm afraid that I'll say something wrong or do something wrong that would make my counterpart or Alvin angry with me. And I don't know if I'm being a good sister if I get myself mixed in with all of this. My brother is my top priority. Description. Luthor's expression softened. He said, now that you know the truth, I can go away if that's what you want, Scarlet. Description. Scarlet squeezed her hands together on her lap. Description. Luthor said, and if we don't see each other again after today. Description. Scarlet furrowed her brows. Description. Luthor said, I just want to say that I think you're brave and selfless. Description. Scarlet covered her mouth with one hand. You think, ellipsis, I'm brave and selfless? Description. Luthor said, the Valdorian mage trials that we fought in happened very recently for me, remember? Description. Scarlet gulped. Yeah, ellipsis. Description. Luthor smiled. He said, I remember clearly that you sacrificed everything to protect your brother. If it hadn't been for you, I'd have moved on to the finals instead of him. Maybe I had a moment, but that's because Soul is my brother and I would do anything for him. Description. Luthor said, maybe, but you also told me to stay in this timeline even though you don't want to be a Timecrest. Description. Luthor said, and I'm not your brother. You don't have any reason to help or protect me. If I return to my timeline, then you wouldn't have to deal with any of this. Description. Luthor paused. He said, I don't know why you were chosen to be a Timecrest. And I'm sorry for the trouble it brings you. Description. Luthor said, but after talking to you today, a part of me is glad it's you, Scarlet. Description. Scarlet's expression is a mix of emotions. She crossed her arms and shook her head. I wish it was bravery and selflessness that led me to tell you to stay in this timeline, Luthor. But it's guilt. Description. Scarlet paused. I don't want to kill people. But I have killed people, ellipsis, people that were trying to hurt my brother or got in his way. And I would kill again, but each life I've taken still haunts me. Description. Scarlet swallowed hard. I told you not to go back to your timeline because I don't want to pile on more guilt on myself. Description. Scarlet swallowed hard. Don't you see, Luthor? You're a better person than me. You're someone who can save the world. Not me. Description. Luthor said, you said you wanted to run away, but yet you're still here helping me to speak with your counterpart. Description. Luthor said, I don't think it's just guilt that makes you risk yourself. Description. Luthor said, I don't see that I'm a better person than you, Scarlet. Description. Luthor said, what I see are two people who have both made mistakes in the past, but still believe that we can do some good. I killed people, Luthor. I don't think you could have made a worse mistake than that. Description. Luthor took a deep breath. Description. Luthor said, I killed someone too. Description, Scarlet froze, a look of shock on her face. Did you just say, ellipsis, you, ellipsis, killed someone, Luthor? Description, her voice sounded raspy. Description, Luthor said, his name is Lieutenant Zone Valsari. He has a daughter named Zoe Valsari who I met before the Valdorian trials. A Valdorian? How did it happen? Description, Luthor said, I was trying to come up with a cure for the Valdorian disease. The lieutenant first showed symptoms of the disease when he was inside this quarantine zone. Description, he said, since my father is seen as a leader of this community, the lieutenant was brought to our home until someone from Valdor could come to pick him up. Description, Luthor said, I took this chance to test my prototype cure on the lieutenant, but my cure had bad side effects which killed the lieutenant much earlier than the disease would have. I quickly took away any remaining life the lieutenant would have had to share with his daughter. Description, Luthor said, I'm not close to saving the world. I couldn't even save the man that I poisoned. Description, the room fell silent. System message, Scarlet, Luthor didn't test the cure on the lieutenant. His robot, Model 1, tested the prototype cure when Luthor told it not to. 1 of 4 respond. You risked your life to help out Mr. Barbello too. I saw that. You're brave, Scarlet, and you're part of the group. 2 of 4 responses. I'm not that powerful. Don't know about Alvin, but you don't need to worry about what you say around me at least. 3. You risked your life to help out Mr. Barbello too. I saw that. You're brave, Scarlet, and you're part of the group. 2 of 4 responses. But, you risked your life to help out Mr. Barbello too. You risked your life to help out Mr. Response. Description, Scarlet's eyes teared up. Description, she swallowed back her tears. My counterpart said something, Luthor. Description, Luthor eyed Scarlet. He said, it's okay. You don't have to tell me if the message is meant for you. Description, Scarlet paused. She nodded. Thank you, Luthor. Description, Scarlet paused.
Excuse me.
I died trying to help Mr. Barbello. I could barely even protect one person. Description, Luthor's expression softened, but he didn't say anything. Description, Scarlet wiped her face again with her hands. Luthor, I still think you're better than me though. It sounds like you killed the lieutenant by accident. All the people I killed were on purpose. Description, Luthor said, accident or not, a man is dead because of me. Description, Scarlet's expression softened. Description, Luthor saw Soul through the window in the distance. Description, Luthor said, Scarlet, I see your brother is walking back. Description, Scarlet looks panicked. She got up from her seat. Are you leaving, Luthor? Description, Luthor nodded and said, I should go. Unless you don't mind your brother seeing me here. Description, Scarlet cringed. And no, you should go. But are you coming back? Description, Luthor said, do you want me to? Description, Scarlet swallowed hard. I don't know, ellipsis. Description, Luthor took out a box much larger than the size of his pocket. He walked over to Scarlet and said, hold out your hand. Description, Scarlet held out her hand and Luthor placed the box onto her palm. Scarlet felt the box. Description, Luthor said, it's a letter box people use to mail things to each other. I have the other box that this one is connected to. Description, Luthor said, it'll only work inside the Valdorian quarantine zone because of the barrier, but I'd like to have the watch whenever you don't want to keep it with you. But letter boxes can only send paper and ink, right? Description, Luthor said, yes, but the pocket watch is indestructible. Description, Scarlet's expression showed that she realized this as Luthor said those words. Right. How could I forget? Were you carrying this box the whole time? Description, Luthor looked out the window. Soul is getting closer, but still a distance away. Description, Luthor said, no, my jacket pocket is lined with a special fabric I created that can store a few items much larger than it without inflating in size. Description, Scarlet looks odd. Oh, wow, Luthor. You made something like that? It sounds really useful. Description, Luthor said, my pocket can only store a few items, but I think I can get it to carry an infinite number of items if I worked on it. Description, Luthor said, but that's not on the top of my to-do list right now. Description, Scarlet paused as she held the letter box in one hand. She looks wistful. Description, Luthor said, will you send the watch to me, Scarlet? Of course. The watch belongs to you, so when it teleports back to me, I'll send it to you through the letter box whenever I have a shift inside the quarantine zone. Description, Luthor said, thanks, Scarlet. But I guess that means we never have to see each other again, right, Luthor? Description, Scarlet looks wistful. Description, Luthor took out another thing from his pocket. He said, I have something else for you. Description, Scarlet held out her hand once more. She felt Luthor place a small and smooth rectangle onto her palm. Description, Luthor said, it's the key to the elevator on the bottom floor of my home. If you use that key to access the elevator, I will know it's you. A key to your home? Description, Scarlet sounds shocked. Description, Luthor said, I meant what I said. You're always included if you want to be. Description, Luthor said, if you send me the watch through the letter box, I won't come by here again. You never have to talk to me if you don't want to. Description, Luthor said, but I'd like it if you would help me speak with your counterpart again. Description, Luthor said, I'd like it if you come visit me sometime, Scarlet. Description, Scarlet's cheeks turned pink. Description, Luthor said, Levidas Ultimus, like air. Description, he said, I hope I see you again, Scarlet. Description, Luthor turned into a gust of wind, lifting strands of Scarlet's hair as he flew out of the room. Description, Luthor blew past Soul as he neared the armor room. Soul looks confused as he felt the wind around him. Description, Luthor blew past Soul as he neared the armor room. Soul looks confused as he felt the wind around him. Description, Luthor traveled upwards, through the quarantine zone. People can be seen below, taking leisurely walks down the well-kept streets. He flew above all the buildings until he reached the roof of his own home. Description, Luthor transformed back from wind and looked down at the pocket watch in his hand. Description, he gazed down at his reflection. Description, Luthor said, I'm not sure if you're still there. Description, Luthor said, or maybe you preferred to have stayed with Scarlet. Description, he closed his eyes. System message, Scarlet is waiting. I'm glad to be with you, Luthor. It's just too bad you can't hear me anymore. 1 of 4 respond. Actually, I would have preferred to stay with Scarlet. Seems like your powers have grown stronger. I'm glad to be with you, Luthor. It's just too bad you can't hear me anymore. I'm glad to be with you, Luthor. Description, Luthor can't hear your message. Description, Luthor opened his eyes. He said, Description, Luthor shook his head. Description, Luthor opened his eyes. He said, I was hoping if I concentrated I could still sense you somehow. Description, Luthor shook his head. He said, I know I took you from Scarlet, but she's the Timecrest, so you'll return to her sooner or later. Description, Luthor smiled and said, I hope it's later. Description, Luthor paused. I actually did it. I told Scarlet everything. I even told her I killed someone. Description, Luthor shook his head. I hope I did the right thing. I hope I did the right thing. I hope I did the right thing. I hope she doesn't get hurt because of me. Description, Luthor took a deep breath. Description, he said, I want to show you what I've been working on. Description, Luthor placed the pocket watch in his jacket pocket. Description, he walked over to the elevator on the roof and entered it. Luthor exited on the 3rd floor. Description, he headed down the hallway to Lab 2 and went inside. Description, Helena clapped her hands together and said, Oh, good you're back. Description, Luthor backed away from her voice and said, Mom, what are you doing here? Description, Helena is sitting at one of Luthor's lab desks. She said, It's dinner time, Luthor, and I made your favorite. Description, she wiggled her fingers and said in a whimsical tone, Griffin egg sandwiches. Description, Luthor said, How long have you been waiting for me? Description, Helena said, Oh, for quite a while. But it's fine. I left instructions for your dad to keep the sandwiches warm. Description, Luthor said, Thanks for making dinner, but can you save my sandwich for later? I'm not hungry right now. Description, Helena's eyes grew large, almost teary. She said, Ash was asking for you. Where's my big brother? I'll eat when my big brother eats. Description, Helena sighed and said, I guess both my children will miss out on a healthy and nutritious dinner, ellipsis. Description, Luthor sighed and said, That's low, Mom. You know I don't do well with guilt. Description, Helena's expression softened. She walked up to her son, reached up and ran her hand through his hair. Description, she said, I know. I'm sorry for trying to guilt you, but I just want us to have a nice dinner together, okay? Description, Luthor sighed. He said, Yeah, okay. You win, Mom. Let's go eat. Description, Helena's eyes gleamed with joy as she wrapped her arm around one of Luthor's arms and eagerly pulled him out of the lab. Description, as she led both of them down the hallway to the elevator, Helena said, So what were you up to today that actually took you away from the lab? Description, Luthor said, You're not going to like it. Description, in a begging tone, Helena said, Oh, please tell me anyways, my dear. Anything that can get you out of the lab, I want to know about. Description, Luthor paused. He said, Sure, I'm going to tell you because then I need a favor from you, Mom. Description, Helena stopped in her tracks. She stepped in front of Luthor and rubbed her hands together with a gleeful expression. Description, Helena said, A favor from me? Do ask. I like it when you owe me, Luthor. Description, Luthor said, I went to see Scarlet. Description, Helena's hands dropped to her side. She said, Scarlet, ellipsis, and ellipsis, you mean there is a new Scarlet in town? Should we host a welcome party for her? I do like parties. Description, Helena's voice sounded nervous. Description, Luthor said, I went to see Scarlet Ignis, your ex-student. Description, in a high-pitched voice, Helena said, You went to see the girl who tried to kill you during the Valdorian mage trials. Description, Luthor said, Mom, how many times do I have to say it? I chose to enter the mage trials. I was the one who put myself in danger. Description, Luthor said, and the favor I need from you is to stop blaming Scarlet for my choices at night. Description, Helena covered her mouth and started pacing in front of Luthor. After a while, she stopped and grabbed onto her son's arms. Description, she looked up at him and said, I'm not angry at you, Luthor. I just want to know why you went to see her all of a sudden. Description, Helena trembled, her face straining of color. Description, Helena said, We've known she works in this quarantine zone for a while and when I asked you to stay away from her,
This is
you
a
didn't seem
very
to
long
mind.
one.
What has changed? Description,
Thank you.
Luthor eyed the spot on his jacket where the pocket watch is behind. He said, I changed my mind, Mom. Description, Luthor said, I always respected Scarlet for how hard she fought to protect her brother during the trials and I just wanted to see how she was doing. Description, Helena looks devastated. Luthor's expression softened. He said, Mom, I'm sorry to spring this on you, but you have nothing to worry about. Scarlet is a really nice person and it's not like she's still trying to kill me. Description, Helena swallowed hard. She trembled and said, did you go to her because I never want to talk about that horrific night with you? Description, Helena looked up at her son, her eyes pleading. She said, I know it's selfish, but it's just hard for me to want to relive the night where you almost died in front of me, Luthor. Description, Helena said, but I'll do it. I'll talk about that night all you want if you stop seeing Scarlet. Description, Helena squeezed her hands together and said, I don't want you to be around a killer like her. Description, Luthor lowered his gaze. He took a deep breath and said, Mom, I've given an invitation to Scarlet to come visit me here. Description, Helena's mouth dropped open. She pointed at the ground and said, here? You mean, our home? Description, Luthor looked his mom in the eye. He said, Mom, listen to me. I don't know if Scarlet is going to come over or not, but if she does, I need you to be nice. That's the favor I want to ask you. Description, Helena's eyes looked from side to side, searching for an answer. She said, can you ask me something else? Anything else, Luthor? I just do not trust having her around you. Description, Luthor said, you once loved Scarlet, remember, Mom? And trust me when I say, she's a good person.
This is weird.
Description, Helena shook her head and looked up at the ceiling for a moment. She eyed her son and said, I trust what I saw in the trials. Description, Helena said, and what I saw was you tried to spare Scarlet and Soul and they tried to kill you. I have no more love to spare for her or her brother. Description, Helena covered her mouth, tears coming to her eyes. She shook her head and said, I can't forgive them. Description, Helena wiped her eyes and sighed. Description, she said, but you're still going to keep seeing her, aren't you, Luthor? Description, Luthor paused. He said, I will if she wants to see me. Description, Helena shook her head and said, so if I don't allow her inside my home, you'll just sneak off to see her? Description, Luthor nodded. Helena looks beat. Description, after a moment, Helena hugged Luthor and squeezed tightly. She said, okay, I'll do what you ask. I would rather you see Scarlet here, where I can keep an eye on her. Description, she said, and I'll be cordial to her if she comes over, but you owe me big time, Luthor. Description, Luthor said, thanks, Mom, and I'm sorry I hurt you by asking this of you. Description, Helena said, I want to call in that favor, Luthor. Description, Luthor bent away from his mom's embrace and said, already? What do you want me to do? Description, Helena let her son go and said, I know you were trying to keep Scarlet and Soul safe in the trials because of me, right? Description, Luthor said, that was part of it. You seem to have cared for them a lot before. Description, Helena said, I knew it, Luthor. They were trying to kill you and you couldn't defend yourself properly because I was watching. Which means, ellipsis. Description, Helena looked away for a moment before saying, which means you almost died because of me. Description, Luthor said, no, Mom. Please don't think that. It wasn't your fault. I was the one who didn't want to kill anyone. Description, Helena said, it isn't Scarlet's fault. It isn't my fault. Well, Luthor, you're my baby so it's my fault and hers. Description, Helena said, so the favor I want from you is to remember that the next time if anyone tries to hurt you, please don't hold back because of me. Description, Luthor paused, before nodding. Description, Helena nodded too. She said, did Scarlet already accept your invitation to come over? Description, Luthor said, I offered, but I don't know if she will. Description, Helena looks a little relieved. She said, I hope she has better sense than to come over. Description, Luthor said, Mom, can I trust you to be nice? Description, Helena cleared her throat and said, oh of course. Sorry. I just need to vent some of these feelings. I'll get it all out with your dad. Woo, he's not sleeping tonight. Description, Luthor said, you can vent with me. Description, Helena shook one finger into the air. She said, no, I can say some of the things I want to say around you, Luthor. Description, she motioned with one hand and said, come on, let's not keep your dad and Ash waiting. Description, Helena put one hand under her nose, covering her mouth, and walked ahead of Luthor to the elevator. Description, Luthor followed his mom into the elevator and they exited one floor below into a spacious greeting room. The greeting room is decorated for a party. Description, Luthor and his mom walked through the greeting room, up a few steps, and turned a corner to enter the dining room. Description, Julius is sitting with Ash on his lap at the dining room table. There is a large, heated platter holding a stack of sandwiches in the middle of the table. A plate of mixed vegetables is beside sandwich platter. Description, Julius smiled at his wife and son. He tilted his head, a curious expression spreading across his face, as he saw his wife's eyes were a little red. Description, Ash jumped out of Julius' lap and said, yay, brother. Description, Ash ran over to Luthor and hugged Luthor's leg. Luthor looked down and ruffled Ash's hair. Ash's stomach growled loudly. Description, Luthor said, are you hungry, Ash? Do you want to eat? Description, Ash said, not yet. I want to show you what I got today, brother. Description, Ash pulled out something and held it out to Luthor. Description, Helena sat down next to Julius. He leaned over and mouthed, is everything okay? Description, Helena looked at her children and smiled. She nodded and mouthed, I'll tell you later. Description, Luthor looked at the item in Ash's hand. He said, is that an eraser? Description, Ash looked shocked and pleased that Luthor guessed it so quickly. Ash giggled and said, yeah, it is an eraser. It can make things we write go away in case we make a mistake. Description, Ash said, and it's shaped like some sort of animal, ellipsis, muffs or something. Description, Helena leaned her head on Julius's shoulder. The parents both looked so happy. Description, Luthor smiled, looking happy as well. He said, you mean muffies, Ash? Description, Ash said, yeah, muffies, are they real, brother? Description, Luthor said, yeah, Muffies are real. Description, Ash said, can we go see one? Description, Luthor paused. He said, I'm afraid there are no Muffies inside the quarantine zone, but there's plenty of them outside the wall, Ash. Description, Ash's shoulders slumped as Ash said, outside the wall? Do you think we'll be able to go outside the wall one day? Description, Luthor patted Ash on the head and said, yeah, Dad is working so all of us can go outside the walls someday. Description, Ash immediately cheered up and waved back at Julius. Ash said, yay, keep up the good work, Dad. Description, Julius laughed and said, thanks, Ash. I will. Description, Luthor said, where did you get the eraser from, Ash? Description, Ash said, one of my friends had erasers and I got to pick one. There were so many colors to choose from, but I picked blue. Description, Luthor looked at the blue Muffy eraser in Ash's hand. Luthor said, why did you pick this one, Ash? Description, Ash said, blue is your favorite color and I wanted to give you a present, brother. Description, Ash held the eraser out to Luthor proudly, with a toothy grin. Description, Luthor smiled and said, if it's a gift from your friend, wouldn't you like to keep it, Ash? Description, with a shake of the head, Ash said, I want you to have it because you're the best big brother in the whole world. Description, Luthor continued to smile as he took the eraser from Ash. He put the eraser in his pocket and said, thanks for the gift, Ash. I love it. Description, Ash looked so pleased. Description, Luthor said, shall we eat? Description, Ash said, yeah, I'm hungry. Description, Luthor helped Ash settle down at the table. He took a seat next to Ash, across the table from their parents. Description, Luthor placed a sandwich on Ash's plate before helping himself. Julius leaned over and placed some mixed vegetables on Ash's plate before passing the plate around the table. Description, Ash picked up a fork and started to pick up a green vegetable, but saw Luthor picking up his sandwich. Ash dropped the fork with the vegetable and picked up the sandwich. Description, 2 slices of golden toast bread sandwich to Griffin egg scramble, giving off a savory and buttery smell. Description, Luthor took a bite of the sandwich. Ash took a bite of the sandwich. Description, Luthor felt the yolk from the Griffin egg in the sandwich break apart between his teeth. His mouth filled with the rich and creamy texture of the egg. Description, Luthor said, Mom, this is really good. Description, Ash said, Mom, this is really good. Description, Helena grinned and said, let's all remember that your mom is good at a lot of things. Description, Julius is working his way quickly through his sandwich. He said, I couldn't agree more, dear. Description, Ash is staring at Luthor with big, bright violet eyes. Description, Luthor took another bite of his sandwich. Ash took another bite. Description, Helena took a bite into her sandwich. She said, I'm good. I'll definitely make more for the party. Description, Helena said, I hope to warm at least a few Valdorian hearts by the end of the night with these. Description, Julius said, thank you for all the preparation you have been doing for this party.
I think
dear.
Ash and Luthor have a
Helena looked
little
excited and said,
have a bondage
"There's still
there.
so much I want
They
to
do
in the
everything
next few days
together.
to make sure everything is perfect. Description, Julius smiled before he looked over at Luthor and said, your friend, Oliver, is coming to the party, Luthor. Description, Helena said, you like Oliver, right? So you'll be at the party, right, Luthor? Description, Luthor said, yeah, sure. I look forward to seeing him again. Description, Helena pursed her lips and said, are the Elder Cranes coming? Description, Julius sighed and said, no, Oliver's parents declined our invitation. I suppose Oliver is coming against their will. Description, Helena sighed and said, too bad. The Elder Cranes are going to miss out on some good food and hospitality. Description, Luthor said, who did you get to watch Ash during the party, Mom? Description, Ash looked at Luthor with big, bright eyes. Description, Helena said, the Roberts. They have a child around the same age as Ash, so it'll be a nice play date. Description, Luthor lowered his gaze. Description, Helena smiled at Ash and said, Ash, make sure you be good for Mommy, my sweet baby. Description, Ash said, can brother watch me instead? Description, Luthor glanced at Ash. Luthor's expression is a mix of emotions. Description, Helena said, no, Ash, your brother will be with Mommy and Daddy. Description, Ash looks gloomy. Description, Helena said, but if you behave at the Roberts, Ash, your brother will put you to bed afterwards. Description, Helena mouthed please to Luthor from across the table. Description, Luthor smiled and looked over at Ash. He said, I can read you a bedtime story afterwards. Description, Ash immediately looks delighted. Ash said, really? Any story I want? Description, Luthor said, yeah, any story you want. Description, Ash said, yay, I want a story about Muffies. Description, the family continued to eat. Julius said, all the paperwork to change us back to Reeds have been finalized. Description, Helena smiled and said, oh, good. Description, she nodded and said, good, that's done now. Description, Helena took another bite of her sandwich, chewing and swallowing. She looked nervously at Luthor. Description, Helena said, Luthor, I just wanted to make sure again that it was really okay to you for us to change our last names back. Description, she said, since you haven't mentioned the Watch or Chronos in a long time, I just figured you were over your Timecrest phase, ellipsis. Description, Helena placed one hand on the back of her neck and said, and the Timecrest name kind of has some bad memories associated to it for me. Description, in a calm tone, Luthor said, I'm happy to be a Reed again, Mom. Description, relief washed over Helena. She smiled and said, okay, then. Description, she looks giddy as she said, the Reeds are back. Description, Luthor finished eating his sandwich. He picked up his fork and started picking at his vegetables. Description, a look of dilemma crossed Ash's face. Ash had taken the same number of bites as Luthor, but the bites were smaller so Ash's sandwich is still unfinished. Description: Ash looked from the sandwich to the vegetables. After a thoughtful moment, Ash dropped the sandwich and moved on to the vegetables to keep pace with Luthor. Description: Luthor said, "Hey, Dad, how are our talks with Janice going?" Description: Julius said,
This
"More
is
or
a
less.
long one.
King Janice allowed us to host Fit Party tomorrow, so I might be finally wearing him down." Description: Julius said, "And the party will be a good chance to connect with some Valdorians and other guests from the outside and rally them to our side." Description: Luthor shook his head and said, "I still think the Valdorians who come are approved by Janice to come. Or even worse, ordered to come. Janice is putting on a show for us like usual." Description: Julius and Helena gave each other a look. Description: Julius wiped his mouth on his napkin. He said, "I'm aware that could be the case, but this party is still a step up from the relationship we have with Valdorians right now." Description: Julius said, "I want Valdorians and humans to talk to each other, so I'm hoping this party is going to push us in that direction." Description: Luthor said, "Dad, we've been talking to the Valdorians for years now and nothing has really changed." Description: Ash looks confused, but is nodding as Luthor spoke. Description: Julius put down his fork and laced his fingers together. He said, "I know you're frustrated that we're still inside the quarantine zone, son." Description: Julius said, "But King Janice did allow us to host this party, so that's progress." Description: Julius said, "It's low, but we have to trust that if we continue to negotiate with the Valdorians, we'll get what we want peacefully." Description: Luthor said, "Dad, I know you think negotiations with Janice will lead to our freedom. I know you're doing the best you can." Description: Luthor said, "But I think no amount of talk will ever change Janice's mind about humans." Description: Julius looks crestfallen. Description: Julius looked his son in the eye and said, "I'm sorry you feel that way, Luthor. But if we stop talking to King Janice, we have nothing. We are just prisoners of Boulder." Description: Luthor sighed as he looked down at his own plate. Description: There was a loud clatter as Ash dropped the fork. Description: Luthor looked over. Ash is wincing and rubbing the hand with the scar. Description: Luthor looks distressed. He said, "Is your scar hurting, Ash?" Description: Ash is shaking with a pained expression, but seemed to recognize Luthor's distress. Ash said, Brother, I'm okay." Description: Julius looks concerned as Helena rushed over. She placed Ash on her lap and said, "Mom will kiss away the pain, okay, Ash?" Description: She took Ash's scarred hand into hers and brought it up to her lips. She kissed the scar. Description: Luthor dug a nail into his palm as tears welled up in Ash's eyes. System message: The pocket watch is teleporting. Description: The pocket watch clicked open. Description: Scarlet heard your message. I'm glad to be with you, Luthor. It's just too bad you can't hear me anymore. Description: The message felt faded. Description: Scarlet looked nervous as she heard it. She closed the pocket watch. System message: Connection lost. Description: The pocket watch clicked open.
Wow.
Description: Scarlet is standing in the kitchen of her home. The savory smell of spices filled the air. The kitchen window is open, letting the cool night air mix in with the warmth inside. Description: Outside the window, a shared courtyard can be seen surrounded by buildings with multiple floors of living space. Description: The outside walls of the quarantine zone is in the distance. Description: Scarlet held the watch in her hand, her expression uncertain. Description: Sol is sitting at a simple dining table for two near the kitchen. He had his feet up on the table. Description: He looked at Scarlet's back as she stood at the stove and said, "Make the noodles extra spicy tonight, Scar." Description: Scarlet nodded at her brother's voice. "Are you sure, brother? Extra spicy always gives you a tummy ache after." Description: Sol said, "Just do it, Scar. I want to feel like I've been kicked in the stomach." Description: Sol leaned back in his chair. With his hands clasped behind his head, he looked up at the ceiling. "Oh, okay. I'll make it extra spicy." Description: Scarlet had her thumb on the lid of the watch. She closed the watch. System message: Connection lost. Description: Scarlet took a deep breath and set the watch aside as she tasted the sauce on the wooden spoon she was using to stir the noodles. Description: After tasting it, she put in 3 more pinches of spices from a jar sitting next to the stove. She tasted it again and followed up with 3 more pinches of spices. Description: Scarlet tasted it again, and made a face. She nodded and didn't add more spices in. Description: Scarlet reached out for the watch. She picked it up and whispered, "So, ellipsis, I'm home, ellipsis, up, my work home provided by the older, ellipsis." Description: Scarlet seems uncomfortable and nervous as she spoke to the watch. "Up, ellipsis, were you with Luthor just now? I couldn't find the watch after he left." System message: Scarlet is Yeah, I was with Luthor until the watch teleported back to you just now. Glad you opened the watch. Thanks for letting me in. 1 of 3 Luthor said nice things about you to his mom. He said you are a good person and he respected you for how hard you fought. 2 of Luthor's mom is still really upset with you for trying to kill Luthor during the Valdorian mage trials. 3 of 3 Yeah, I was with Luthor until the watch teleported back to you just now. Yeah, I was with Luthor until the watch teleported back to you just now. Glad you opened the watch. Thanks for letting me.
You have reached the end of Part 2 of Timecrest 3, Chapter 13. Please continue to Part 3. So that's it for today's video. If you guys have any more questions, please put them down in the comments below, or you may send them to info@TheTechPianoPlayerKid.com. You can also give me a text at 913-312-1325, and if you do not live in the United States, you can text me through WhatsApp and give me a call there as well. I also have a toll-free number that you can use to give me a call at 877-318-8775. Please also follow me and like my Facebook page, The Tech Piano Player Kid, and follow me on Twitter, tech_piano. And you can also join my discussion forum on my website where you can ask questions about technology and help to answer questions about technology for the blind and stuff like this by going to TheTechPianoPlayerKid.com and clicking on the discussion board page underneath the navigation bar menu where you can register for a free account and help to answer questions and ask questions if need to be. Please make sure that you get permission from your parents if you still need to do so before making an account, just to make sure that you're on the safe side and that you don't want to get in trouble because we don't want that to happen. And you can also subscribe to my monthly newsletter if you wish by going to my website, TheTechPianoPlayerKid.com. Again, if need to be, get permission from your parents just to be on the safe side. And you can unsubscribe at any time if you wish. And if you have any trouble with unsubscribing or creating an account or deleting your account, please let me know and I will do my best to help you out. Anyway, that's it for today's video. God bless you all and peace. The Tech Piano Player Kid is out. Thank you for watching today's video. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on post notifications and leave a comment down below. For questions, please send an email to info@TheTechPianoPlayerKid.com. You can also give a call or text at 913-312-1325. And don't forget to like my Facebook page, The Tech Piano Player Kid, and follow me on Twitter, tech_piano. Black background with white text that reads The Tech Piano Player Kid displays on the screen with the same text written to the right in Braille, then fades to black.